All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our stream of the third Republican debate, the 2024 election. I apologize for missing the second one. I was a little incapacitated, even though that was the plan. I won't go into any detail, but yes. So either way, are you gentlemen excited about the third Republican debate?
Well, I guess we'll just go in order. Frankly, no. This is just going to be another bourgeois clown show, as they always are. And the most entertaining man is probably not going to be here. I'm guessing Trump isn't here tonight.
No, I believe he is not, unfortunately. But all these other chuckle fucks are. I mean, we could be excited about that.
Yeah, let's
But
prepare to
they're
see
just
the
not as
comedy.
exciting, though. They're not as exciting.
Yeah, they're just comedic. That's it.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that oh what's his name? Oh wait, is Chris Christie gone or is he still here?
I think he's
I
still
don't pay. He's still here.
I think he
Christie will just
qualified.
appear. Oh, yeah. Christie will just
I'm
appear
surprised
like
he
every
lasted.
single
I'm
year.
surprised Chris Christie lasted this long, though.
He lasted a while, like in 16 was like the last time I actually somewhat paid attention to bourgeois electoral politics.
Yeah, that's fair.
Unfortunately,
Anybody, or so who's everybody like at least marginally looking forward to seeing? If anyone?
Chris Christie and Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Are you still a DeSantis supporter?
Well, originally I was backing Nikki Haley, but she was too friendly with the libs for me. So then I started backing Mike Pence, but he dropped out. So essentially I'm watching this debate and then I'm going to decide who to support.
Personally, like my least favorite, and I was going in expecting like to be fine with him, at least at the very beginning before I even really knew much about him. But I do not like Ramaswamy.
I mean, he's just Chat GPT, as Christie said.
yeah, he is.
Ramaswamy is something that I can't say, but yeah, I definitely want him to lose. And he's essentially a Trump copycat. He's running for the VP spot. He's not running actually for president.
I mean, that's what I've heard.
I just think that. Yeah. So I just look at. I think he's part of the merchant caste of India, and literally he does like the merchant spiel, like using endless buzzwords to try to get you to purchase something or to buy you into his ideas. So to me, it's just within his natural caste spirit, and he can't help it of just repeating buzzwords to the normie con crowd that will just eat it up because the normie cons are just sheeple.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree for the most part. I mean, it's no different than like you have the shit libs, the boomer cons. I mean, they are part of, as you would say, the same caste, for the lack of a better term.
Yeah, they're all peasants in orientation.
And no offense to Net Seven, the resident boomer con here. No offense to him, but I think he's like kind of in the Kevin Castley sense. He's a proud. Well, okay, you know what? I'm gonna say Kevin Castley's definitely not a normie. Like, he's insane.
I think he's the logical extent of the normie mentality taken.
So he's like
degree.
He's like an extreme normie, an extremist.
He's part of the Ukraine cinematic universe, as I'll put it.
Ukraine cinematic universe.
I'm gonna borrow a phrase from Arjun. Yeah.
Yes, that and as the Israeli cinematic universe now takes off in Gaza with the evil paragliding Hamasians, I guess.
I don't know. I definitely am pro. I mean, quote unquote pro Israel in this specific circumstance. Like, I mean, it's clearly Hamas is the instigator in this case. Like, come on.
I'm I
like
am
that.
going to. Neither side are my people. Neither side I care about. If we're talking about people of the Middle East that I care about, they were literally ethnically cleansed a couple weeks before this whole Israel thing happened, called the Armenians, and everybody forgets about Nagorno-Karabakh. And literally nobody in America cares. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that's a whole nother issue right there. But okay, Armenians aren't being ethnically cleansed. It's not. It's again, when Azerbaijan gets attacked by Armenia, Armenia's fundraising people over here in the States go, "Oh, look how bad these Azerbaijanis are." It's nothing more than just hot air from people who are just anti-Turkish.
I mean, I am anti-Turkish, so I'm anti-Muslim, I'm anti-Turkish, I'm pro my own side. I'm blamed and honest about it, unlike most people. My own people are Christians first, well, probably Germans first, broader Christian second.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think they're starting here in about 5 minutes. Well, okay, let's move on. What's everyone's expectations for this debate specifically?
I think Nikki Haley, number one, is going to try to get attention out of this debate, like she did last time, and she did fairly well because apparently Republicans love abortion. So that's my prediction.
Yes.
I'll try to stand out in this debate.
Yeah, yes, they love their child murder, guys. This
Yeah.
is a classic Republican stint.
It's popular.
Yes.
Well, what am I expecting? Christie will probably go on the attack on Trump. He'll probably try to use this as an opportunity to go after probably DeSantis and Haley to try and crack into the top three, which is what he needs to do at this point. He has been able to maintain being in the debates because of the financial backing he's got from centrist-minded voters, from some Republican donors. He hasn't raised as much as people like Ron DeSantis have, but he's spent the least. He's had a Spartan campaign. He's done that for particular purposes because he wants to maximize the amount of money that he's going to have later. And this is probably where he's putting all his bets in to try to break out. Nikki Haley is probably just going to do more of the, lib conservative stuff, which is watered down conservatism. She's going to try to paint herself as, I'm the person that has the best chance of beating Biden in the general election. Vote for me, support me. Ron DeSantis is in home territory right now. I'm kind of unsure what he'll do, but if there's a time to come after Trump right now and stake your claim as the number one Republican contender, now's the freaking time. You're in home turf. You've got home base support. Trump's 15 miles away. He's not out. Not out to attack you. He's going to be attacking you. So it's your time to stake your claim as the number one candidate. It's now or never. And I think Ron DeSantis needs to do that. So we'll see.
And also, we can't hear the volume.
No, yeah, I purposely turned it down. I mean, we still have what, 3 minutes before it starts, I believe.
Oh no, I see a fat
Look at our
God,
cast.
no,
Like
no,
Scooby-Doo.
Look, Rama Smarmy right there with his smile. Like I don't know, there's just something about him that is so fake. Like, no offense if you like him or if anybody in the audience likes him, I just don't find him to be particularly likable, personally.
He's an Indian. I don't like him.
Ramaswamy took a swipe at neoconservatism. I don't even think he knows what it means, and that's most critics of neoconservatism. So all I gotta do is that.
I admit most of them don't know what neoconservatism is, but I just don't. I still don't like what neoconservatism is because I actually understand it. But either way, it looks like it's starting. They're taking the poll.
Noel, you work a lot with donors. You need money to run campaigns.
I wish Ramaswamy.
If you're out there in the crowd right now, what's the one thing you hope happens if there's a candidate you're vying for?
Well, one of the things that that you want to hear is fixing problems, solutions to problems. And I'll tell you something else that I'll be looking for after the debate is the momentum donor. And that's the small donor, because the momentum donor is a movement. That is a voter. Because if for someone, Obama captured that. For someone to give $20, they're going to vote because they don't really probably have that $20 compared to the bundlers that are giving $100,000 to super PACs. So I'm looking for that momentum.
And they'll do it again.
Yep.
Well, the other
Yeah.
piece of this too. I mean, listen, and I've heard, Noel, it's interesting. I've heard from donors too who say, yeah, there is a lot on the line here for the people who are looking for that anti-Trump candidate. Is it going to be Ron DeSantis? Is it going to be Nikki Haley? Looking to
Unfortunately, he
tonight.
is not here,
The other
Patrick,
piece of
but
this,
he'd
we
be
haven't
very
touched on it
entertaining
much,
if
but
he
it
was
is the
there.
biggest thing that drives voters to the polls, and that is the economy. That is the plan that these Republicans have to help people feel better about their money.
Yeah, Hallie, and especially with the Republican-based inflation, big attack on the Biden administration gets people excited. Everyone's feeling it, but also immigration, which every Republican primary voter cares about, and Israel, an issue that is especially important to Christian evangelicals. These are issues that these candidates are going to use tonight
Oh, yes,
to try to get
evangelical
those voters
eschatology.
amped up and get some
The
contributions into their
evangelical vote.
campaigns.
Hogan, explain one thing to me.
Brings
We're
its
running out of
head
time here. They did a super PAC did a series of ads.
Even
focusing on the Trump
neoconservatives
indictments.
and
It actually empowered them.
neoconservatives
They felt they
should be getting
actually didn't
along
run the
more.
ads because it
We
was
have
not
a lot of
it backfired.
similarities.
Well, explain to me on the Republican side how that works.
It's not just about Donald Trump. So many out there in this country, if you like the wrong tweet, if you download the wrong podcast, if you attend the wrong speech, you're targeted by this government in some way. Your political positions are now being exploited by the
I mean,
three-letter
Nikki
agencies,
Haley
by
would
the
let her
federal
just do
government. If you're
that
for life,
to
they're
us as
arresting you. If
well.
you're worried about your daughter being raped
I'll
in the
keep it
school in
turned down in
Virginia,
case
you're the
nobody-
one who's arrested, not the other
Any
person.
commentary until the
It's
actual
that
debate starts. As last time what we did, we're
I
going
used
to
to
be
like Nikki Haley, but geez.
no. What we're going to be doing, like we did last time, we're going to be actually watching the debate. We can make little snarky quips here and there, but during the commercial break is when we're going to have our actual commentary because we don't actually want to talk over, of course, the candidates who are debating. However, I might still need to put in the occasional dig at Ramaswamy because I like the idea of liking him, but I just can't help but dislike his personality. So I don't hate his policy ideas necessarily, but
I hate
don't
his
know.
policy and I hate him. That's what I think of him.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Pajit, I don't like him.
As
Well,
I search for,
how much do you think they're going to talk about Israel in this one? Because I know the last debate, the second debate, was about 2 weeks before Israel was attacked via Hamas. So that wasn't really an issue they were talking about, but I feel like that might be at the forefront of this particular debate.
It probably will be the first or second question, if I had to predict.
I remember for the first one, the first question of the first debate was asking about Richmond, north of Richmond.
Yes, it was rich. Yeah.
It was kind of cringe. I mean, I don't have anything against that song by any means, but like it was kind of a cringy question. It's like as if any of these candidates are actually for the working class.
yeah, I don't know. I'm just disillusioned. Let's just say I never really cared for these things because nothing actually gets done. Like it's just an appeal to. I mean, not really anybody. Like most people are already have their minds settled. Like what is it? 90% of people already come with their minds settled, and these are just formalities.
They should ask about a new non-woke military commercial.
Literally, white boys need to fight and die for Israel. That's the point of the non-woke ads.
What's the problem with killing Hamas? I don't see a problem with that. I would think that'd be based.
What's
Same
the
thing.
problem?
I don't like Hamas. I just do not.
What's the
I don't
problem with not
understand these
wanting to
people-
fight a war over there?
I do think anti-Semitism
There's a
these days
big
is more
problem with
prevalent
not
on
finding
the
one to
left,
fight a war
generally.
there. And this classic struggle again.
Right. All right, I'm gonna go grab some more alcohol because I think I may need it for this debate.
I think
Good
we all do.
call.
I have a 40 right
Good
here.
call.
As I'm already 4 beers in tonight.
I hate Nikki Haley. I
Yeah.
despise Nikki Haley so much. It's unreal how much I despise this woman.
Yes, I agree, because she would lock me up for my let's just say less than favorable views of her favorite people in the world.
Yeah, okay. Patrick, bring in the audio now. I think they're asking the first question. It's going to be about Israel, I know.
Yes.
Popular among Republican primary voters as his legal challenges mount. Governor DeSantis, let me begin with you on this one. Speak to Republican voters who are supporting Donald Trump. Why should you and not him be the Republican nominee to face Joe Biden a year from now?
This country is in trouble, and the elites that have put us here, they don't care about you. They don't care that you're having to grapple with higher grocery prices or have higher gas prices. They don't care that your family's less secure because of the open border that's allowed drugs and even terrorists to come into this country. Well, I care. I am not going to sit idly by and let this country continue its downward spiral. We need leadership, and we need it now. I'll take the hits. I'll take the arrows. I'll take the slings, because ultimately it's not about me. It's about you. I will fight for you. I will make sure to lead this country's revival, and I will win for you and your family. Actions speak louder than words. We don't have time for excuses, and it's not something that we're going to be able to have all these distractions. As a veteran, I will get the job done. Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than where we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing. In Florida, I showed how it's done. 1 year ago here, we won a historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County. That's how we have to do it. So I promise you this, as the nominee next November, I'll get the job done. And as president, I will deliver.
Your time is up. Let me turn to Ambassador Haley. Audience, let me turn to Ambassador Haley. Why you and not the former president?
Well, I think you look at the fact that we're almost $34 trillion in debt. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bills. You have parents who are worried about what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. There's no transparency. We have anti-Semitism all over our college campuses, and students feel unsafe. You've got an open border where terrorists can come through, and we've got wars happening all over us, and there are dangers around us. You know, everybody wants to talk about President Trump. Well, I can talk about President Trump. I can tell you that I think he was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president now. I think that he put us $8 trillion in debt, and our kids are never going to forgive us for that. I think the fact that he used to be right on Ukraine and foreign issues, now he's getting weak in the knees and trying to be friendly again. I think that we've got to go back to the fact that we can't live in the past. We can't live in other headlines. We've got to start focusing on what's going to make America strong and proud. And that's what I'm focused on doing. Let's make sure we pay down our debt. I think we need an accountant in the White House. Let's make sure that we have transparency in the classroom. As a mom, I know what that means. Let's make sure we secure our borders so that our families are safe. Let's get crime down, because our families want to know that they can be safe no matter where they go. And as the wife of a combat veteran, I will tell you, a military needs to know we have our back, and we need to make sure that America is strong.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
As a veteran, I do not endorse any of these candidates.
Is Nikki Haley a veteran?
Let me just caution the
No,
audience.
she
Let's not
has
go
a
down this
veteran
road. We've asked you to
husband.
please, keep restraining yourselves. It would be helpful so we can hear the candidates, because these are important issues and the voters want and need to hear them. Mr. Ramaswamy, let me turn to you. Please make your case. Why should you be the nominee and not the former president?
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer to the Republican establishment.
Okay, true.
Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020. 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We got 10 times the viewership.
What?
The questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, we've got Christian Walker here. You think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Christian, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media.
Yes, Republicans, become more partisan.
Asking the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years. Was that real or was that Hillary Clinton?
I just want to say, and I say this as someone who doesn't really have that much against, like, I still watch Joe Rogan and stuff, but like, he's not right wing. Like,
no,
Joe Rogan's a liberal.
Media rigged the 2016.
No, I think he's more of a socialist than a lot. He's like a libertarian socialist kind of.
Oh, fuck that. That's gross.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why you?
Socialism is bad, but libertarian socialism is like another level of awful.
Governor Christie, why you and not former President Trump?
Well, Lester, look, you said it at the beginning of the debate. We are dealing with extraordinarily important issues facing this country right now.
Okay.
We have our greatest ally in the Middle East under fire from a terrorist group that has committed to wiping them and every Jewish person in this world off the map. We have Ukraine.
Jews are mentioned.
With Vladimir Putin,
a
a communist KGB dictator who wants to put the old band back together. He's starting in Ukraine.
Communist.
And he's
Yep,
move
I'm
to
taking
the Baltics
another
and
drink.
Poland after that. We have inflation in this country that
Putin's
is
totally an imperialist. Okay.
choking every American family that wants to try to rise up and give their children a better life.
Boomer truth.
And
Okay, whatever.
tonight, we need to decide which president is going to be the one to tackle the big issues, who's going to make this country look once again, not just inward, but look outward at the world and say America is the country, the indispensable nation that makes this a safer world. And in a safer world, American innovation, American hard work has always been the thing that has driven our country to greater things. I'm going to be the president who will do those big things. We're not going to be small. And I'll say this about Donald Trump. Anybody who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country.
All right,
and it needs to be said plainly.
Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Senator Scott. Senator Scott, you've said former President Trump can't win. Make your case to Republican voters.
Well, certainly. What I would say without any question is that the truth of my life destroys the lies of the radical left. We need a president and a candidate who will actually help our base solidify and
I don't know how
attract
he's still in the
independent
debate.
voters into our
I'm
party.
shocked
The
that
Great
he's still doing
Opportunity Party is now winning back African American voters and Hispanic voters because we are working on a foundation based on faith. Our nation is facing some deep challenges. It is the loss of faith in this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. It's restoring faith, restoring our Christian values that will help this nation once again become the city on the hill. When Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill, he was coming from Matthew 5. When President Lincoln talked about a house divided, that was Mark. Our founding documents speak to the importance of the faith foundation. You don't have to be a Christian for America to work for you, but America does not work without a faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation.
No,
I would be the president that helps us restore faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future. Without that focus, none of the issues,
he believes the talking points that he's been fed.
We have to get back to being a nation that is, in fact, the city on the hill, that believes in each other enough for us to fight for that future.
Senator Scott,
I
thank you.
like him, but
I'm gonna say they're
I don't know
talking
how
like
he's
this
still on the
is
stage.
still the 80s. Like, I mean, Trump, like, I mean, 1980 through 2015 consensus. Like, I mean, Trump completely changed how these, I don't know, just like the sort of
what's the
politician.
next question on this stage?
I'll say it on the break. But.
Hostages who remain captive there and civilian casualties mount inside Gaza. As President of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this moment? Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists.
I agree.
They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe if they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender. I'm sick of hearing the media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And I can tell you, as governor, I actually did something about it. Biden's neglect has been atrocious. We had Floridians that were over there after the attack. He left them stranded. They couldn't get flights out. So I scrambled resources in Florida. I sent planes over to Israel, and I brought back over 700 people to safety. There could have been more hostages had we not had the first plane load when they came to Florida, and one of the mothers pointed to a 6-year-old daughter. She said, "My daughter had been saying the last 2 nights, Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida." So there's a difference between words and deeds. We acted, and we saved lives.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, what would you do? What would you be urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do? Would you consider humanitarian pause, for example?
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them. And the reason is I worked on this every day when I was at the United Nations.
I actually want to point something out.
Remember that
John
they have
Bolton
to, eliminate
has not
Hamas
endorsed Nikki Haley.
with whatever they need,
That's an
whenever they
interesting thing to
need it.
think about.
And 3, make sure we
Even
bring our hostages
neoconservatives are
home.
debating on whether
We
to
need to
endorse
be
Nikki
very
Haley or
clear-eyed
Ron
to know
DeSantis.
there.
So Satan hasn't endorsed Haley yet. Okay, noted.
Be the
He's a
Iranian
hero,
militias
not
in Syria and
Satan.
Iraq
More like
that are
Jesus.
trying to hit our.
Well, he is the little Satan.
He's Satan's national security advisor currently after Trump fired him.
There is an unholy alliance.
Yeah.
We need to be clear-eyed. The last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel. They are the tip of the spear when it comes to this Islamic terrorism, and we need to make sure that we have
We
their
never
back in that
did.
process.
Even as a vassal in the Middle
Ramaswamy,
East,
any daylight between you and the candidates we
What's
just
wrong
heard
with
in this
vassals?
What you would tell
nothing's
Israel
wrong
is
with
the
that.
I would tell
homeland.
the prime minister no. In fact, I would go
Israel's the
one step
homeland of our
further. The founding
masters.
vision of Israel was based
People
on
want
the
Israel
idea
to
that they
surrender.
don't
I'm
want
sorry.
to depend on
I want to hear what
anybody
Visick
else.
says.
They are
I'm
directly
sorry, like, that's the
independing
only reason.
themselves. So what I would
And
tell
I say
Bibi
this is somebody
is
who
that
doesn't
Israel
is
has
like
the
not an
right
Israel
and the
like,
responsibility
big Israel
to
fan.
defend itself. I would tell him to
like,
smoke
they
those
have a right
terrorists
to
on his
exist,
southern border.
like-
And then I'll tell him as president of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border. That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests.
That's a lie.
$7 trillion to our national
No,
debt.
it's not.
Dead
Joe
because of
Biden
that.
sold off
No,
our
it's
foreign
not.
policy.
I
Joe Biden's
was
done. Hunter Biden got a
literally
$5 million bribe
Please,
from
hardly
I'm
Ukraine.
saying
That's why we're
sent
sending
over there
$200
by our
million
politicians.
terrorism.
It matters.
It's
The
a
Republican
complete
Party is
lie.
not that much better.
9/11.
You have the
There's
likes
no
of Nikki Haley, who
truth
stepped
behind
down
it.
from her time at
I
the
don't-
The
UN.
world's biggest
Thank
sponsor
God for
of
You
Russia's
didn't have
social
to, you didn't
terrorism.
have to
Guys,
occupy
It's a military
Afghanistan.
contractor.
Guys, let's listen to him. You can talk next
That
time.
that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right,
In
Mr.
which case, we've got
Ramaswamy.
2 of them on stage tonight.
Ramaswamy, thank you.
Okay,
Senator,
Okay,
Senator
that was
Scott,
actually a good
Senator,
roast.
same question to you about you're the
You know, he
president,
was
you're on the
roasting-
phone in the Oval
roasting,
Office with the prime minister, you
DeSantis.
tell him what?
Or where are those
Well, number one,
shoes the
I
other
would
day?
tell Prime Minister Netanyahu, not only do you have the responsibility and the right to wipe Hamas off of the map, we will support you. We will be there with you. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder. There will be no daylight. But I would change the station a little bit, though, and head back home to America. I would say to President Biden, diplomacy only is a weak strategy. Appeasement leads to war. From President Obama to President Biden, Obama sent millions to Iran. Frankly, President Biden has sent billions to Iran. That is why I've said that there's blood dripping from the hands of President Obama and President Biden. I would tell President Biden with great clarity, if you want to stop the 40+ attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike in Iran. If you want to make a difference, you cannot just continue to have.
I know Net 7, you're 100%
on
for that.
warehouses. You actually have to cut off the head of the
beating
snake.
Iran,
The head of the
that's one of the worst things
snake
we could
is
do right now.
Iran, and not
bullshit. It'd be one of the best things we could do.
In order for us to have
Restore
a
the Shah.
powerful response from America, we have to be in a position of strength. As President of the United States, my foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
All right, Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, I want to get you to weigh in here.
Depends on your
Man,
definition.
I actually might like this guy.
These problems are so big and serious that the first thing I would say to Prime Minister Netanyahu is pretty simple. America is here, no matter what it is you need at any time to preserve the state of Israel. Remember that Hamas's main goal is to get rid of Israel, is to get Israel
What's the
absolutely
point?
off the map.
Like
Now,
Vivek's the only guy with a different
three things I
opinion.
think
Even
I would
Hamas
say
admits
to him
that.
when he asked for advice. The
absolutely
first I
right
would say
here.
is that
Like-
it is absolutely your
I
obligation.
mean, I don't blame them honestly
protect
for having the
territorial integrity of
objectives
Israel.
that they have.
Secondly, to make sure you protect the security and the
I'm
safety
not
of
shilling for them. I
Every
can
time
just see
something happens
from
to
their
compromise
eyes.
either one of those things,
You can't
it
see
creates
from
greater
Rainey's
unrest.
eyes or see
Hey
in the
guys,
entire
guys,
region.
wait till the commercial break before
Second,
we discuss this.
you must go in and make sure that Hamas can never do this again. The fact is that Israel and their intelligence community failed. They failed here, and they failed the people of the state of Israel. And so we need to work closely and better together to make sure, one, that they're degraded, and two, that we know everything that's going on inside the Gaza Strip when it's going on, so that something like this can't happen to kill 1,400 individuals again. And the third thing is to keep your eye on the ball. Make sure that we continue to isolate Iran. Work with the reasonable nations in the Middle East, the other Arab nations who want to partner with you, and make sure that we continue to isolate Iran so that their only friends in the world are the part of the evil force of
this is
China,
gonna be me being
Russia,
American,
Iran, and
but
North
Governor
Korea.
Christie,
Iran is
thank
not
you
an
very
Arab
much. And we're going to
nation.
continue in this vein right now with a question from Matthew Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a partner of the Republican National Committee in this debate. Here it is.
Given attacks by Iranian-backed proxy groups on U.S. military bases in Syria and Iraq, attacks that have wounded approximately 24 of our U.S. servicemen, do you support the use of military force by the United States against Iran?
Governor Haley, would you please answer that?
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
We've got two of you on stage.
The second thing that I will say is I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition. What we need to be doing for Iraq and Syria is, first of all, the idea that our men and women could be targeted and that we've allowed almost 100 hits to happen under Biden's
Literally,
watch is
Iraq asked
unthinkable.
us to leave.
We need to understand this is Iran giving the green light, telling them what to
I
do.
don't care.
And we shouldn't be doing the tit for tat like
Okay,
what Joe Biden has
colonizer.
done. We need to go and
Yeah,
take out their
colonization was good.
infrastructure that they are using to
Civilization's
make
good.
those strikes with,
It
so they can
depends
never
on
move
which
again.
country's doing the
Iran
colonizing.
responds to strength. You punch
Yeah,
them
the
one
West,
and you punch
and
them
that's good.
hard, and they will back off. But
I
what we
support
don't
Christendom,
need
not the
is
West.
Biden falling all over himself to get back in the
West
Iran
is
deal.
Christendom.
Him giving $6
No,
billion
it's not.
to get 5
It's-
hostages home.
This
Him
is a whole
telling
different debate.
Netanyahu now that he needs a pause or a ceasefire. We don't need him going and sitting there tiptoeing around Iran because he thinks they're going to do something. You don't respond to an enemy and a terrorist with fear. You respond with strength. When you do that, that's when the world pays attention, and that's when Iran stops.
Thank you. Governor DeSantis, if I can continue with you. Just today, the U.S. launched another one of its limited airstrikes against targets in Syria, this time Iranian-linked facility. How far would you go militarily to hold?
I agree, Patrick, in the
Iran
chat. I agree.
Well, first, Matt, thanks for your question, and I appreciate what you've done over the last month. I know it's been very difficult for the community, and appreciate you guys rallying together in difficult times. I actually served in Iraq back in the day, and we had Al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Shia militias that were funded by Iran that were killing hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops. And as commander-in-chief, I am not going to put our troops in harm's way unless you're willing to defend them with everything you have. Biden has them out there. They're sitting ducks. He's doing glancing blows. That's just inviting more attacks from the Iranians. I would say you harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay. We are not just going to sit there and let our service members be sitting ducks, and that's true whether it's Iran or whether it's any country on the world. We have to be strong, and we have to defend the people who defend us.
All right, thank you, Governor. Now our second and final question from Matthew Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Please watch.
Jewish students across the country are threatened and under attack. What do you say to Jewish students on college campuses who feel unsafe given the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism? And what do you say to university presidents and college presidents who have not met the moral clarity moment to forcefully condemn Hamas
college
terrorism?
campuses right now is legitimate.
Mr. Ramaswamy, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely.
And again,
I think the scourge of anti-Semitism across this country, including at places like my alma mater, places like Brooklyn Bridge in New York, it's sad to see. But here's what history teaches us. Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper cancer in a country and a society that is lost.
Revelations 3:9.
Several years ago, when I wrote my first book, Woke Inc., I was talking about they were chanting death to America. Death to white people, death to Christians. Nobody was waking up back then. Now it's even bad. Now they're saying death to Israel and worse. So it is wrong, but we have to get to the root cause here. Now, I think it's really important that we do this through leadership, not censorship. Leadership means fill that void with purpose and meaning. Dilute this wokeism and anti-Semitism to irrelevance. These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel.
Where anti-Semitism has become the woke
But I also want to
position.
caution here: if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley,
If you don't submit
agree on this
to
issue, censorship, telling student groups to disband,
the narrative, you're literally Hitler narrative.
vaccine and its side effects, you're a bioterrorist. Soon they will say that if you show up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. Soon, if they say that J6 prisoners should be released, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. So that's where this road ends. We don't quash this with censorship because that creates
terrorist at this point is also a buzzword. Like it's used by everybody. Just
administrators have lost their way, and
it's pretty much just used as a buzzword to say, yeah, we want to eradicate these people, so we're just going to call them terrorists and use that as a blanket justification for any violence done against that group.
Senator Scott, let me get you to weigh in on what you said.
Oh, we shouldn't do what the left's doing.
Let me just say to every
You don't fight fire with
single
fire.
university
wanna
president
get
in
burned.
America, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Number one. Number two, to every student who've come to our country on a visa to a college campus, your visa is a privilege, not a right. Number three, any campus that allows for anti-Semitism and hate, to allow students to encourage terrorism, mass murder, and genocide, you should lose your federal funding today, period. To all the students on visas who are encouraging Jewish genocide, I would deport you from those campuses. We have to stand strong with our Jewish Americans. At the end of the day, we should not have
as a free speech
our
guy,
Jewish students
I'm not a
in a
fan of what he's
library
saying here.
being told to hide
I'm not a free speech
on our
activist.
streets in New
I used to
York.
be
A
until I
Jewish
saw what people-
citizen has the
until I saw what the
right
left
to
tried to
walk
do with
on the
us,
streets
shut
of
us up,
America with
and then
no
I said,
fear.
well,
They have the
who can say
right
that?
to go to college campuses, go to class, and not fear. We will restore that. I started working on anti-Semitism on college campuses in 2017 because even then there was a rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. We must force the people off those campuses and
Senator
frankly,
Scott, thank you. Let me
out of our country.
Let me turn to the Governor DeSantis here. What do you think about what he just said?
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked. Second, I have friends here
And I
in
bet he's
Florida
going to fly to
who
Israel to sign that
their
bill.
kids do not
He
feel
did do
safe
that.
even going to university campus at all
Yes,
outside of
he
the state
did
of
that for
Florida.
Florida.
You have Jewish students fleeing for their lives
I guess I'm never
at
going to
Cooper
Florida.
Union. Joe Biden should have the Department of Justice on these college campuses and holding the universities accountable for civil rights violations. When you should not have money going to these places. I already acted in Florida. We had a group, Students for Justice of Palestine. They said they are common cause with Hamas. They said, we're not just in solidarity, this is what we are. We deactivated them. We're not going to use state tax dollars to fund jihad. No way. And what is Biden doing? Not only is he not helping the Jewish students who are being persecuted, he is launching an initiative to combat so-called Islamophobia. No, it's the anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control. That is what we have to confront. And as president, I can tell you this, we are not going to stand for this on college campuses any longer.
All right, Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Governor Christie, and considering what he just said, you led a state with a sizable Muslim population. Last month, as you know, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was killed in Illinois by his landlord. His mother was also stabbed more than a dozen times in what has been charged as a hate crime. What do you say to Muslim Americans who are also feeling afraid for their safety right now?
Lester, I'm the only one on the stage who's actually had experience in dealing with this. I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And when I took over that job after the September 11th attacks, I had to deal with a situation in our state that was explosive. We're the most ethnically diverse state in this country. And so first, we heard credible reports about Jewish students and synagogues being threatened in our state in the aftermath of 9/11. We made sure that we sent federal agents to those synagogues and we protected them, and the same thing should be being done now. At the very same time, I personally went from mosque to mosque in New Jersey and met with the leaders of those mosques and with the members of the mosques. And I said to them, law enforcement is on your side to protect you, regardless of your religion, if you are going to comply with the law. And we developed fabulous relationships with Muslim Americans all across the state of New Jersey, and we stopped any hate crimes that were going on either against Jewish Americans in New Jersey or Muslim Americans in New Jersey. It takes leadership, Lester, to know how to do this. You must work with both sides. Both sides need to know it, but let us never have a false moral equivalence between Hamas and Hezbollah and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stand for right and justice, and Hamas and Hezbollah stand for death.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, what do you say to Americans who are
Like
simply
Hamas in
afraid
the
right
Bible
now in
actually
this
translates
current
to
environment that we're
violence.
talking about?
It's interesting.
I think you look at the
anyone
country,
know
and the
about
country is
Palestinian
all out
Mickey
of
Mouse
sorts. I think look at what these kids are dealing with on college campuses. What makes me so angry is not
There's
only
a
do you have the
Palestinian
kids
Mickey Mouse?
barricaded in the
gonna have to show
library,
you guys on the
they
commercial
said
break.
they were going to shoot up the kosher dining hall.
It's
You've got
really
kids'
screwed up,
dorm
but
rooms
it's
who are
kinda
being set
funny.
on fire because they have something related to Israel on their doors. No person should ever feel in danger like this. And this is what I would say about our college presidents, is if the KKK were doing this, every college president would be up in arms. This is no different. You should treat it exactly the same. Anti-Semitism is just as awful as racism, and we've got to make sure they're protected. And for everybody that's protesting on these college campuses in favor of Hamas, let me remind you something. Hamas said death to Israel and death to America. They hate and would kill you too. And the idea that they're talking about genocide for the Jewish people, that's not the values of America. That's not us. We're better than that. We don't need to celebrate terrorists. We don't need to celebrate genocide. We don't need to celebrate violence towards anybody. We need to go back and soul search in our country and remember what we are about. And we are about taking care of people, not going and making them live in fear because some other terrorist activity says they want to destroy them.
Ambassador, thank you. Kristen.
Lester,
Mickey
thank
is
you.
like
This is another question for the
black,
entire
just like
field, so
meat.
you will all get a chance to respond. But Senator Scott, I'd like to start with you. The United States
has given Ukraine financial and military support since the war began more than 600 days ago. President Zelensky told me on Sunday, if Russia isn't stopped now, quote, the price will be higher for the United States, and Americans would be forced to, quote, send your sons and daughters to defend NATO countries. Senator Scott, where do you stand on more funding for Ukraine?
I certainly have been very supportive of Ukraine. I believe that
non-Ukrainian
ultimately
Zelensky.
we should make sure that the President of the United States states what is America's national vital interest
You know what
in
I hate
Ukraine.
about
It is
Ukraine
actually in
situation
degrading
is
the
that
Russian military. We've been very effective using
everyone
our
talks about
resources
Ukraine,
and
but
our
no one talks about
weaponry
Afghanistan.
and the incredibly
There's a reason
high
for it.
price
Ukrainians are white.
of Ukrainian blood to achieve that objective. Every day we get closer to the degradation of the Russian military, and that's good news. But the American people are frustrated that they do not have a president who reminds us and tells us, where's the accountability? Where are those dollars? How are those dollars being spent? We need those answers for us to continue to see the support for Ukraine. And at the same time, I would say that a package that's been offered by the president for Ukraine and Israel, that's the wrong approach. We need to focus specifically on providing Israel with the $14 billion that they need so that we show the world that we are 100% undeniably standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And then as we turn away from that direct support for Israel, we should
yes,
go to
Best
our
Gamer.
southern
Where
border
is
and
America's
close
support
our
from,
southern border with
where
the
are these
resources
conservative
necessary.
supports?
I believe
Oh,
that
right,
we have
doesn't
sleeper
exist.
terrorist cells in America.
Like,
Thousands
it's
of
just a
people
lot
have come
fucking
from
cheaper
Yemen,
if we just
Iran,
literally go in with
Syria,
our own
and Iraq.
troops rather
If we are going to
than
deal with the
support
national
the nation.
security emergency
I support more
at our
direct
border,
action rather
we
than
have to do it
give you
now.
money and
Senator
you do
Scott,
it
thank you.
yourself.
But just to be very clear,
Yeah,
if you were
why don't we just
president, if
destroy
you were in the
Azerbaijan?
Oval
That
Office
just
today,
works.
Let's
would
wait till
you
commercial
sign
break,
off
gentlemen.
on more military
Fuck
funding for
Armenia,
Ukraine, or would you just
okay?
continue it?
You know, I'm sorry.
Bottom line is we
Armenian
have to
genocide
first have the
doesn't mean
level
you
of
can-
accountability that
Let's wait till
allows the
commercial
American
break,
people to
gentlemen,
understand
before we have this
where the
conversation.
resources have gone. Number one. Number two, after we have that responsibility taken care of and accountability, then we have an opportunity to look at the overall strategy that helps us degrade the Russian military while we use our resources and, frankly, keeping our NATO partners safe from the Russian military is absolutely essential. As you understand, Article 5 would require to support and to defend NATO, our troops on the ground. The fastest way for us to eliminate that possibility is for us to destroy, to the extent possible, the Russian military. By doing so, we actually achieve the objective of keeping our military home. And that's good news.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Mr. Ramaswamy, are you persuaded by President Zelensky's urgent new plea? Where do you stand on more funding?
I'm absolutely unpersuaded. And I'm actually enjoying watching the Ukraine Hawks quietly, delicately tiptoe back from their position as this thing has unwound into a disaster. The first half of this race, I was the only person standing for it. Now they're actually quietly coming around to being more cautious, as they should. Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic. More facts for you that you won't hear from the mainstream in either party or the mainstream media. The regions of Ukraine that are occupied by Russia right now in the Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk, these are Russian-speaking regions that have not even been part of Ukraine since 2014, that other people probably couldn't name those provinces for you. Those are the hard facts. And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it. And I'd like the likes of the sharpest of the war hawks on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, to have some accountability and answer. Do you want to use U.S. taxpayer money to fund the banning of Christians? That is actually what's happening. They're using the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have banned them. The Ukrainian parliament just did this last week, supported by our dollars. And I think you owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one
Mr.
time
Ramaswamy,
condemn,
thank you. That's time.
at least to
Mr.
condemn
Ramaswamy,
their
thank
banning
you.
of Christians.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
Or else we're
thank you.
talking out of both sides.
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. We asked the questions. Ambassador Haley, what is your take on more funding for Ukraine?
I am telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to
The
see
fact of the matter is she doesn't answer
So this
the
is
question.
what I will tell you.
We're
is,
driving
first
Russia
of all,
into
let's
China's
a bit more
remember-
reasonable.
because of
You
these
had
foolish
your time to
policies.
talk. The ambassador has the floor.
Thank
Ambassador
you. The
Keith.
first thing I'll tell you is we all remember what that thug did when he invaded Ukraine. We all know that 500,000 people have died because of Putin. And here is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. And I'll tell you, if Biden had done it when they first asked for it, this war would be over. But let's also remember this. When you left Afghanistan in shambles and left them with a ton of weapons and money, it's not that we left, it's how we left. When you look at Ukraine,
Someone
don't think for a second, now everybody wants to move away from Ukraine. They'll want to move away from Israel a year from now. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. Now is the time to get partnerships. This unholy alliance between Russia, Ukraine, and China is real. There is a reason that Taiwanese want us to support the Ukrainians. It's because they know that China is coming after them next. There is a reason Ukrainians want us to support Israelis, because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins.
Ambassador.
We have to see the combination of the three.
Ambassador, thank you. Governor Christie, what is your take? And how long should Americans be expected to help fund the war in Ukraine?
Kirsten, let's remember the last time that we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe. It bought us just a couple of years. And then 500,000 Americans were killed in Europe to defeat Hitler. This is not a choice.
Oh my God.
This is the price we pay for being the leaders of the free world. And the fact is, this alliance is not just with Russia and China. Governor Haley knows this. Iran is in the middle of this as well, and so is North Korea. And they are all working to support Russia right now. And the reason they're doing it is because dictators work together. People who believe in democracy work together. We must stand with all of those that are standing up for democracy and freedom in this world. And by the way, let's remind everybody of this. In 1992, this country made a promise to Ukraine. We said, if you return nuclear missiles that were part of the old Soviet Union to Russia and they invade you, we will protect you. An American promise that's 31 years old is no different than an American promise that's made tonight on this stage. We need to stand by it. And those of us who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And
I'd like to respond.
And the absolute giving in to dictators, which is being suggested on this stage, just shows the immaturity of the approach.
I'd like to
Governor
respond.
Christie, thank you. Governor DeSantis, I'd like you to weigh in on this idea. Are you concerned that this could become a wider war if Putin is not stopped now?
Well, any suggestion by Zelensky or anyone else that we're going to eventually have U.S. troops there, I can tell the American people when I'm president, that will not happen. We are not going to send your sons and daughters to Ukraine. I am going to send troops to our southern border. If you look at the threats that we face, terrorists have come in through our southern border. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to have the military, and I'm going to deport the people who've come, particularly under Biden, who've come from the Middle East, come from all these places. Now, Biden wants $105 billion. 60, most of that's Ukraine, including some of it going to pay pensions for bureaucrats and salaries. That is a totally ridiculous use of American tax dollars. He says he has money for border to try to do, and the media repeat that. When you look at it, what most of the money is money to process more illegal aliens into this country. How is that solving the problem? That's making the problem worse. And what does he do for the Indo-Pacific? A pittance. That is the top threat that we face. We need to bring this war to an end. We need the Europeans to step up and do their fair share. And we need to get serious about the top threat that this country faces, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
So if I
Thank
may
you,
respond
Governor.
to the Ukraine
Hugh.
question.
In fact, we are going to go from the hot wars in Ukraine and Gaza and Israel to what many people are calling the new Cold War with China. And I remind the audience that it's important for our visitors at home to be able to hear you, and especially for the people in Beijing to hear you. Many Republicans believe that the Chinese Communist Party and General Secretary Xi is an existential threat to the United States. The flashpoint is Taiwan. For decades and decades, the American military, but primarily the United States Navy, has deterred an attack from China to the island state of Taiwan. But Ronald Reagan's Navy of 600 ships is gone. Now, the question to you is, and I'll start with you, Ambassador Haley, because you were in President Trump's cabinet. His goal was a 355-ship Navy. That's what he pushed for. He got to 300. It's now at 291. Is that big enough to deter and, if necessary, defeat an invasion of Taiwan?
China has the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. China has built up their military. It's not just land, air, and sea. They're doing cyber. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing space. America needs to modernize our military. We need to do everything we can. The first thing is you go and you make sure you have the backs of Ukraine. That's why the Taiwanese want us to support Ukraine, because they know that sends the biggest message to China. The second thing is we go to China and we start being tough on them. No more sales of our American soil to China, and let's take back what they've already stolen. Then you go and to the universities. No more having millions of dollars go to our universities. Then we will go and end all formal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans from fentanyl, something Ron has yet to say that he's going to do. And then we modernize our military. When we strengthen our military, when we modernize it with the focus of cyber, artificial intelligence, and space, when we make sure that we have the backs of our friends, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, and we should be arming Taiwan. Make sure they have the equipment they need. Make sure they have the training they need now. There's nothing China fears more than knowing that America will have Taiwan's back. Let's make sure that we show it by making sure they have the equipment they need.
Governor DeSantis, my question is specifically about the Navy. It's at 291. It's going to go down perhaps as low as 280. Is it enough? And what would you build if you were going to build more?
Actually goes not enough. We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial of President Xi's ambitions. And if China is able to be the world's leading superpower, that will affect you and your family in ways that are going to be very bad. They will export authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business. They will impose things like social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is, to this generation, what the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation. I've already released a plan. We're going to get to 355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path to 600 ships over the next 20 years. I think the future of freedom is going to be determined in the Indo-Pacific. We have a strategy not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. You know, Ambassador Haley said somehow I wasn't doing. She welcomed them into South Carolina, gave them land near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That was like their number one way to do economic development. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in this state, and we kicked out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institutes out of our universities. We've recognized the threat, and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
Senator Scott, you've been in the Congress since 2011. Defense spending has fallen over that entire period of time. Where are we going to get the money, and what would you build, and what kind of ships to deter China from attacking Taiwan?
Well, two major problems with the question. Number one, we do not have currently a defense industrial bank to allow us to have the kind of production that we need in order to keep America safe. Frankly, if we are not prepared to fight and engage in 3 continents at the same time, think about where we are today. In the Middle East, we are in the midst of trying to back our strongest ally. In Eastern Europe, we've seen our resources and our weaponry help degrade the Russian military. The Indo-Pacific, we have real challenges. The long-term threat is China. Immediate threat is our southern border. In order for us to have the military to fight 3 different continents at the exact same time, we're going to have to invest heavily in our military, but we're also going to have to invest heavily in an industrial base so that we can hit our objectives from a military perspective, not only with our ships, but also with our planes. We are so old as a military that in order for us to recalibrate, we're going to have to invest. One of the things I do in my Made in America strategy is we create more than 4 million new jobs by having high-tech manufacturing come back to America, decoupling from China, so that we focus our attention on creating that industrial revolution that will be necessary for us to achieve the goal of having a military that is ready to be lethal and come home
Thank you,
safe.
Senator. Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm looking for specifics.
COVID really
What
proved
would you
that why we
build?
need
Where
to
would you build it? When would they be in the water? How big would the fleet get?
First answer is end
Really
the
proved Bill
toxic
Clinton and all his
divest
friends
to
wrong.
invest program. For people who don't know about that, we're decommissioning ships in the South China Sea. The foundation of war is economics. Rebuild our defense industrial base at home. But here's the dirty little secret. Our actual defense industrial base depends on China for the supply chain, for the F-35 jets, for the ships that we're building. Think about this. Why are we stockpiling that if it isn't to actually be strong against our enemy, China? We depend on them for that, just like we depend on them for pharmaceuticals, just like we depend on them for semiconductors. So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy. That's the Declaration of
very
Independence
true.
that Thomas Jefferson, at the age of 33, would have signed. Today, if he were alive,
Well, even a
that's the
broken clock
Declaration of Independence that I will sign as the next president. I do have to recognize that Ron
all
DeSantis was
these are
correct
broken
about
clocks, but the other
acknowledging
ones
Nikki
don't
Haley's
even,
tough talk when she was
strike.
ambassador to the UN, calling China our great friend, bringing the CCP to South Carolina. What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a
Just a
lobbying-based
bunch of
exemption in that
boomers.
bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile
One
radius
millennial.
of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. We need politicians who are independent of the forces that
Vivek
increase our dependence on
works with the
China.
Hill,
My
and the
message to
Hill
Xi
is like
Jinping is
pro-Iran,
this.
pro-China.
You are done buying land in this country.
Vivek is
You will not
no-
donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese
you
market
know-
until you play by the same set of
Mr.
rules.
Ramaswamy,
You're
They
kicked
could
out of the
just seize all the
WTO,
land
and
owned
you
by
actually
Chinese
have to
in
have
America.
accountability for the
That is the
COVID-19
right of any
pandemic
national government.
financially, which unleashed hell on the world.
Ramaswamy.
We have to hold them accountable.
So what? Vivek wouldn't do
a
it.
number
He doesn't-
of-
Even if Chinese people
We're
bought
going to
land
increase
in
our naval
America, you can
capacity
just
by at
seize
least
that if you're the
20%
state.
over the course of the next
That's
several
a real
years.
simple
I think we have to,
solution
at
that
minimum,
nobody
be able
talks
to meet
about.
the AUKUS agreement standards. Right now, we are at risk of not even being able to meet our AUKUS standards with Australia and the UK. So what we need to do is have a plan that reverses the trajectory of the divest
Thank
to
you.
invest program
Hugh, I'd like to
by
respond.
20% over the next 3 years.
Governor Christie?
You know, my first observation, Hugh, is that nobody answers your question. And my second observation is these three in the middle think they're the enemy. I know China is the enemy, and that's what we should be focused on. So let's be really clear. The nuclear submarines in this United States Navy is the greatest deterrent to Chinese aggression, and that is the first place I would go to increase American naval power. Our nuclear submarines are able to move stealthily, quietly, and effectively. And if we are going to deter China from invading Taiwan, the only way we're going to do it is to make sure that they don't know whether how many nuclear submarines from the United States of America are in the South China Sea and in that area and ready to strike on them if they decide to move on Taiwan. And so we, as our first priority, need to go directly to our nuclear sub program, Q, and we need to increase it drastically. That would be priority number one. Ships would come next, but to me, the ships are secondary choice here. The submarines are the single most important thing that we could be using to deter China. But the other thing we could do to deter China is to let them know that the blood money they're spending for Russia in Ukraine right now will not be effective, that we send Putin home with his tail between his legs and make them understand that the same fate waits for them if they decide to move towards Taiwan with a more aggressive nuclear sub-program. We'll be able to make that threat real.
Thank you, Governor. We're going to take a brief pause now, and we'll be back to the Republican presidential primary debate. Please stay tuned.
Okay, well, so Boomer Truth, the debate, and I guess you have one guy that isn't 100% Boomer Truth. He's just 90% Boomer Truth. I know, dude. I'm guessing that's also your consensus on this.
Yeah, also the school point they were trying to make, it's like conservatives have been discriminated against schools for like decades now, and they couldn't care a jack shit about that whatsoever, or white people or Christians being shut out, their groups being banned or censored, but we're going to care about this tiny group of people, and they're going to get like 20 minutes of the debate. Clown show. Geez, it's like I'm watching the race for the president of Israel or something, quite frankly. Honestly, it would make more sense if I
Yes.
was.
Yes, we are watching. Hey, Politicrat, I'm trying to share my screen. Why don't you show my meme of what I think this debate is?
Also, I want to counter the point Haley was trying to make about
Yes.
strengthening.
Okay,
her
that's
position
that's
in the
pretty
Middle
funny.
East.
That's pretty funny.
Yes, that's very true.
Yep, that is all this debate is. How much tax money can we shill for other
You're not
nations?
necessarily incorrect. You're not necessarily incorrect. But I don't know. I'm just not. I can't get around. I can't get around to like Ramaswamy. I'm just not a fan of him.
I mean, I'm not a fan
I
either.
don't know
but
why he's so popular. I mean, maybe to some people in my audience he is, but I don't know. He just doesn't seem genuine.
Like I talk to people and they like him, but like he's essentially running to be Trump's VP. And
That's what I've heard. That's what we discussed last time on the last cover or the first debate, because I was not able to cover the second debate because there was a lot of crap happening that week.
I covered the first. I didn't cover the second. Like,
okay, yeah,
he's just running to essentially be Trump's VP at this point, and Vivek is essentially nothing more than a mouthpiece for the Kremlin, for the CCP, for the Ayatollahs. I mean, his biggest support comes from the fucking
This is
Hill.
where you lose me sometimes.
The FBI.
No, it's his biggest support comes from the Hill. Okay, the Hill are the people like Kyle Kalinske and Sarah and Hager and all those other people.
No, they're not. They're not the Hill.
Biggest-
That's Breaking Points. They're Breaking
Breaking
Points. not the
Points
Hill.
is part of the Hill, though. They wouldn't have.
No, they're not. They're completely
they got their
separate, completely
start
separate
from the Hill. Okay, so
Yeah,
the
no,
Hill-
but they're a separate. But they're a separate entity. They started on the Hill.
No. Oh yeah, just like Tucker Carlson stuff is separate technically from Fox, but the fact of the matter is that it still got its start there, and it was still overtly supported from there, or at the very least tacitly supported.
I mean, the Hill is owned by News Nation, and News Nation is one of like the better outlets these days.
Also, I do want to.
What's everyone? Okay,
Australia.
let's change the subject to something more lighthearted. What's everyone drinking tonight? Because I don't think we can get through these things entirely sober.
I'm drinking a dark barley beer.
I know. I saw you with a Foster's earlier, also. Net 7. I think you had a Foster's earlier.
No, this is
and
just
I have
hard
another
Lipton
meme.
iced tea. This is my fourth one, and actually,
I saw your Doomer post earlier with the case after you just bought it. So,
well, yeah, like I'm going. Well, I just went through a recent breakup, so that's why I'm going.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, it's
either way,
well,
it looks
it-
like they are. Looks like our friends are back. So,
Yay!
My God.
Push propaganda and divide America. It's spyware, he said, a means of surveillance. Governor Christie, do you agree with Chairman Gallagher? And if so, would you ban or force the sale of TikTok?
I agree 100% with Chairman Gallagher. And let me say this. TikTok is
We
not
shut down
only
our own
spyware.
propaganda
It is
program before
polluting
we
the minds
shut
of
down
American
TikTok.
young people all throughout this country. And they're doing it intentionally. And when you saw what happened in the last few weeks with all of this anti-Semitic, horrible
I am
stuff
100%
that their
on board with banning
algorithms were
TikTok.
pushing out at a gargantuan
Well,
rate.
well, yes, but they also need
This
to ban
is
our own
China trying to further
propaganda
divide
outlets
the United
if they're
States
gonna
of
do that,
America.
just to be
And this is one of
consistent.
the big failings among many of the Trump administration. He talked tough about TikTok. I heard him do it many times. But when it came down to it, he did not ban them when he could have and should have. And now since then, we've had an additional nearly 6 years of this type of poison being put out throughout the United States, even putting aside the spying, which we know is going on, and the theft of American personal data and information. So in my first week as president, we would ban TikTok. They want to go ahead and sell it? Let them go ahead and sell it. But I'll tell you another reason we would do it. Facebook's not in China. X is not in China. They're not permitting a free flow of information to the Chinese people from our social media companies, yet we just open the door and let them do what they're doing. TikTok should be banned because they are poisoning American minds, and I would do it week one.
Thank you, Governor. I want to go to Governor DeSantis. Would you ban or force the sale of TikTok, regardless of whether or not China allowed American apps to operate in China?
Yes, I think that China's the top threat we face. They've been very effective at infiltrating different parts of our society. So my policy on China and the Chinese Communist Party is very simple. We win, they lose. And in order to do that, it's not just military, it's economic, and it's cultural. And as the dad of a 6'5" and a 3-year-old, I'm concerned about the data that they're getting from our young people and what they're doing to pollute the minds of our young people. These kids get these devices and they have a mind of their own. And I know a lot of parents are looking, it's hard to even keep it out. China's obviously the most extreme, but this is happening with other things. So we are going to do that, and we are going to make sure to protect the American people. It's a full spectrum approach to be able to fend China off. Yes, military deterrence. Yes, economic decoupling, but also their role in our culture. If we ignore that, we're not going to be able to win the fight.
Thank you, Governor. Ambassador Haley, speak to the parents out there. There are probably TikTok apps on half the phones in this auditorium.
No, I'm going to speak to the fact that 2 people hit me and you didn't let me respond. So let's first talk about the fact that they want to talk about the Chinese land from 10 years ago. Yes, I brought a fiberglass company 10 years ago to South Carolina. But Ron, you are the chair of your economic development agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses. Not only that, you have a company that is manufacturer of Chinese military planes. You have it. They are expanding 2 training sites at 2 of your airports now, one which is 12 miles away from a naval base. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
months
didn't
ago.
give them anything.
What's your story?
And I abolished that agency that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise Florida, we abolished it. And of course, we banned
He
China from
scrubbed
buying
the
land.
website
Not
last
exactly
week.
a
Go
great
check.
recruiting
I
pitch
want
if you're
to,
banning them from
You
purchasing land
scrubbed
at
the
all. So
website
we've stood
last
up
week.
and
Thank
we've
you,
done the
Ambassador
right thing
Haley.
in Florida.
Mr. Ramaswamy, we've talked about this. You
Yeah,
campaign
Haley,
on
you're
TikTok. How do you get TikTok banned if you use it?
Well, I want to laugh at
Gotta
why
do
Nikki
it.
Haley didn't answer your
Please.
question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made
Ramaswamy
fun of me for actually
is-
joining TikTok
out of
while
all of
her
these
own
candidates,
daughter
he is the
was
one who
actually
would use
using the app
TikTok.
for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
preaching to
out of your
anybody. It's your
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're
The
just
easy
scum.
answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data to the CCP. Now, that's a U.S.-owned company. So this is the problem when you have Republicans that temporarily go the way the
And as
winds
the
blow. And
resident,
now
like,
it's popular to
economic
talk tough on China when she was
libertarian
UN
here, I have a problem
ambassador,
with that.
called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend. You can't be fair weather
can't really
fans
hear
of the
you
right
that well
policy.
over
Get
him.
to the root cause. Even U.S. companies in Silicon Valley are regularly.
No, I was saying I can understand the sentiment for like, and I think it's bad that they're selling out certain things to the CCP. But like, the whole point of banning a company, or like, it just doesn't sit well for me. Banning like American companies, getting rid of that, and maybe that's just like the economic libertarian in me, but I don't know. I just think that the anti-market stuff it really pisses me off. And I know this is where you and I disagree, Kilhoun, because you're more on the reactionary side and don't care as much about economics, but still.
I
I hate
mean,
TikTok, ban it immediately.
I think that honestly, I bet if America had a more coherent ideological system like the CCP does, like I would prop that we would make our own social medias and outlets of propaganda that aren't outsourced to private companies like they are in the United States, like the U.S. government just using literally social media just to filter out ideas it doesn't like. and push people towards ideas that the U.S. state thinks that is kosher.
Yeah. Well, let's get back. We can wait for the next commercial break. We can continue this conversation then. But
I appreciate y'all clapping for me already. This is wonderful answer. Love this. Without any question. What we should do is ban TikTok, period. Now, we saw under former President Trump, he tried to ban TikTok twice, but was struck down by our federal courts. If you cannot ban TikTok, you should eliminate the Chinese presence on the app. Period. We also should provide, in my parents' Bill of Rights, we give parents the opportunity to give their kids permission under 14 to be on those apps. I think it's incredibly important for us as Americans to take back control of the information, especially of our kids. Where does it go? We should know that. One of the ways that we get to know that is by having a parental consent. But if we can eliminate TikTok, that is a first step. But it's not just TikTok. China continues to spy on our kids, but they're also buying our farmlands. We talked about this several times there. We have to make sure that we use the tools that are in our toolkit to stop China from buying farmland near our bases. The third thing we have to do is make sure that they stop stealing our intellectual property.
Yep.
They're literally stealing
100%.
our IP to compete against us. My administration, we stopped that day one, and we start making sure that we create six-figure income for jobs made in America through my strategy.
Kristen.
Hugh, thank you so much. We're now going to talk about Venezuela, where millions have fled political and economic turmoil. Many Venezuelan immigrants are settling right here in Florida. Former President Trump and President Biden have taken different approaches to Nicolas Maduro's regime with little result. Former President Trump put economic pressure on Venezuela and backed one of Maduro's rivals. President Biden temporarily
I know you
eased
guys are way
sanctions
more
to encourage
anti-immigration than
electoral
I am,
reforms.
but like
Governor
I
DeSantis,
can
do
get down
you
with
see
it.
the political situation in
No,
Venezuela
Venezuelans are the
as a
worst.
threat to the United States, and what would your approach be?
We should never rely on Venezuela for oil like Biden has had to go beg. I'm going to unleash all of America's energy potential. On day one, I'm taking all the Biden regulations, the Green New Deal, ripping it up and throwing it in the trash can where it belongs. We're going to lower your gas prices. We're going to create jobs. We're going to lower energy costs, but we're also going to be more energy independent and secure. We'll choose Midland over Moscow. We'll choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we'll choose Bakken over Beijing. That is good for America's national security. Biden's Green New Deal, that's good for Venezuela, it's good for Russia, it's good for Iran, and it's good for China. So I would turn the screws on the Venezuelan regime. I think it's a corrupt, dictatorial regime, and we should never go hat in hand begging for oil from them.
Just to be clear, would you reimpose the sanctions?
Yes, absolutely.
Ambassador Haley, what would your approach be?
You know, I stood on the Simon Boulevard Bridge and watched thousands of Venezuelans cross for hours in the hot sun, holding their babies to get the one meal they might get that day, going from Venezuela to Colombia. They were fleeing socialism and begging for freedom. We need to make sure that we do everything we can to sanction
Depends on your
Maduro. We shouldn't be
definition of
getting dirty
freedom.
oil. And Biden just gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary priority status, which is just going to have more of them come. But on the energy side, it cracks me up that Ron continues to do this. He has opposed fracking. He's opposed drilling. Last time he said it wasn't true, and everybody found out that it was true. He opposed it before Florida voters even voted on it. He was praised by the Sierra Club, and you're trying to make up for it and act like you weren't a liberal when it comes to the environment. You were. You always have been. Just own it if that's the case. But don't keep saying you're something that you're not.
Let me respond to that. Our whole energy plan, you can't get the shale without fracking. We are absolutely going to frack, but I disagree with Nikki Haley. I don't think it's a good idea to drill in the Florida Everglades, and I know most Floridians agree with me.
You banned fracking.
Thank you very much. Lester?
I don't like the idea of
Let's turn
fracking
to
in the
one of
Everglades.
the biggest
like in
issues
national
for
parks
voters,
and
that
stuff.
of course is the
Also,
economy.
Florida
This
has
is
a very
question that will
fragile
go to
water
all of you.
table. That's
An
why he
Iowa
did
voter
it. So it's
recently
actually
told
kinda
NBC
smart.
News, "How am I going to make sure my
Fracking is
I'm not
viable only in very specific
you
environments.
see, I always joke I'm an environmentalist in the J.R.R. Tolkien sense, not the Extinction Rebellion sense. Like, I mean,
A right-wing ecologist.
like Frank Herbert.
What, literally the entire right wing before they were corrupted into being shills for corporate America.
And a certain country in the Middle East.
Yeah, and a certain country in the Middle East.
But no, but I do like. I mean, I feel like Frank Herbert is the like. Is like the archetype of a modern right-wing ecologist. Like that was like the entire inspiration for Dune.
I mean,
along
yes,
with
I
the
just think it was
philosophy
part of
Thomas
the
Carlyle. Thomas
you
Carlyle's
didn't
great
like
man
need to
theory.
be explicitly an ecologist to like to them these weren't positions, they were just natural to them. Like a preservation of the land for your future generations is just it's honestly just the traditional method of going about your life and taking care of the world.
Like, I mean, I know Gilhoon. I know you're a Roman Catholic, so of course you know Saint Francis of Assisi. Like this was his entire ministry was based on the sanctity of nature, more or less. So
well, that was one of his many teachings, yes, and things
yeah,
that he
no, it was the
emphasized.
idea that to understand God, you must look towards the natural world. In order to understand creation, that is how you may discern the nature of the Creator. That was the core of his philosophy.
Well,
I mean,
well,
I'm being
yes.
very simplistic right here, but like, I'm not gonna. I know this is not a theological stream. But.
And I'm not the greatest expert on Saint Francis, but I know that he emphasized a lot of different things in his ministries.
Nature
and
mysticism, yeah, especially like
natural
nature mysticism is very complex.
So basically, they're arguing about like, basically we need to send money to both Ukraine and Israel. Just like how much money is the argument essentially?
Honestly, if I had to choose between the two, I'd choose Israel over Ukraine. It's just I just don't like Ukraine has a right to defend itself, and I like the idea. Like I'm very pro decentralization. Like I said, I'm a big like Ludwig von Mises. I'm in the Mises circles. I'm a member of the Mises caucus. So I like extreme decentralization. So like I like the idea of a Ukraine existing, but I just don't want to fund it. It's like just you have a right to defend yourself, but just leave us out of it. Like
I just hate the fact that effectively forces greater than their own have instigated Christians killing fellow Christians over there. That's what irks me.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
On a better economic footing right away.
So I started off working minimum wage jobs. I did $6 an hour as an electrician's assistant. I worked all kinds of things to be able to get through school. And I did that because I believed in America, if you work hard and get the most out of your God-given ability, you can get ahead. And what's happening now, many of you are working hard and you're falling further and further behind. I've met people in Iowa, New Hampshire, and all across the country who've talked about all the burdens that they're facing with the rising prices. And I've heard from multiple people the same story. When they go grocery shopping, what they now do is they figure out what they have to take out of the cart once it's ringing up, because it rings up so much faster and so much higher at the cash register that they can't afford the full cart of groceries anymore. We have to restore the American dream in this country. What can you do on day one? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the executive orders, the regulations, everything involving Bidenomics. I'm going to rip it up. I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one where it belongs. That is going to give the economy breathing room. And I'm also going to rein in the Federal Reserve. They have helped create, with their reckless monetary policy, what we have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic.
A
They botched it.
nationalization
Congress
of the
botched
Federal
it.
Reserve.
Both parties
I
are
like
to
the
blame.
sound of it.
No,
Fed should
the
focus
Fed.
on
Classic
stable
Ron Paul
prices. They
position.
are not an economic
No,
central
you
planner
gotta
for the
nationalize it
American
to
people.
control the
Governor,
money
thank you. Mr.
supply.
Ramaswamy, weigh in on this.
Okay, Kami,
ways that you can improve people's financial condition in the
That's not a
short term.
communist
Right.
position.
And as a
that's
CEO,
just
the
a,
economic question is core
rational.
to
You
my
don't want
vision, policy
inflation
prescription
in
for
your
this country.
currency, so you
Increase the
control the
supply of
bank
everything.
that prints
It's the law of supplies and demand.
That's just
Increase the supply of
101.
energy. That brings down the cost of
101
energy,
if you want
grows
to
the
maintain
economy.
your power
Drill,
and
frack,
maintain
burn coal, embrace
longevity
nuclear.
of your,
Increase the supply
I
of
guess, your
labor
market.
in this country. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home instead of to go to work. Increase the supply of housing. People don't talk about this one in the
who's literally
Republican Party.
government worker.
The land use restrictions are constricting the supply of housing. That's making housing more expensive for
How about
ordinary
you stop the
Americans
flow of
across this
immigration,
country.
though? That's
So
the
that's the
biggest
true answer. And I think it
problem with
takes a
that.
CEO in the White House who actually understands this
It,
to
literally,
get
Hungary
this
was
done.
able
Because
to
Americans
do
at
it
home,
with
they know the
couple
Bidenomics
million
is a lot.
bucks.
Well, it's probably because his family are immigrants. It's usually those like issues that like hit closest.
Oh
to
yeah, he
home.
benefited from it. Of course.
Dude, no, did you know he was a Soros fellow?
Yes.
He was part of the
I-
WEF. Yeah, he was part of the WEF.
Yes.
He was literally
He's
part
a,
of the
no,
WEF.
Vivek is a grifter. I do not trust this. Dude,
Well,
I
yes,
trust
he-
Mike
what-
Pence. I trust Mike Pence more than I trust Vivek, personally.
Well, like we said earlier, he's ChatGPT. He just simply plugged in the algorithm of what gets normie cons wet in their pants, and he just says all that.
He goes on
And
poll and sees what's popular.
Yeah, that he also he plugged poll into the
Classic
algorithm.
cringe populism, basically.
I mean,
Lester,
he's
part
at
of
least
the-
more entertaining than
part of the
any of the
entire premise-
rest of the wet noodles on the stage.
I mean, Chris Christie's kind of fun to just kind of like chuckle at.
He's not as funny though, man.
He's not. He's not. But like, oh, do you know what's funny? How corrupt he actually was when he was governor. Like, he wasn't a terrible governor, but he was corrupt as hell. Like, he was in bed with the mob. Like,
It's New
I can just
Jersey.
picture him as a character on The Sopranos, like the useful idiot that Tony Soprano deals with.
This up. And let me tell you the other place that's bidding it up in the Middle East. And so if you don't believe that making sure that Israel and that Israel situation going on right now isn't resolved and resolved quickly as President of the United States and bring stability back, that will also not permit countries like Saudi Arabia and others to be able to jack their prices as well in what they say is in response to a crisis, when it's really what it's in response to is putting more money in their pockets. When they have an American president who knows that Israel must be defended not with humanitarian pauses and not with suggestions for ceasefire, but with letting them know we will supply them with everything they need, that will also bring stability to the market. Energy is the key to bringing this down. It's what every American family needs when they turn on their lights, fill up their car, and go to the grocery store. And we need to do that first and foremost. That's the short-term answer.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me come at this from a slightly different direction. Americans in rural communities are being especially squeezed by inflation right now. An Iowa State University study found that last year inflation cost rural households about an extra $5,000. How would you specifically help rural Americans who are suffering right now, Ambassador?
Well, I'm a product of rural America. I grew up in rural South Carolina. And I can tell you what we're seeing now in America is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We have to go and start beefing up the middle class. And the first thing I would do is I will eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this.
Do you guys want to know who else grew up in rural South Carolina?
Lindsey Graham.
John C. Calhoun. Never mind. I thought you guys would find that funny.
John C.
The guy who said slavery is a positive good. You don't remember? The senator? Okay, never mind.
Oh, right, that guy. Okay.
No, he was
I had to
Jackson's
Google him.
vice president, but they hated each other. And believe it or not, Calhoun was actually considered the liberal for his time. And he was the one who like argued in favor of slavery as a positive good. But he was basically like a classical liberal type, but was like very pro-slavery, but also very pro anti-tariff, pro-decentralization. So basically, he was basically a libertarian for slavery, I guess. But he's still considered one of the 5 greatest senators in U.S. history. And I generally like Calhoun, but he's like the opposite of a broken clock. A broken clock is right twice a day, but Calhoun was a fixed clock that was wrong like once a day. Like, that makes sense. It doesn't, but like, you know what I mean. It just so happened the one issue he was wrong on was a very important issue, but I digress.
Said, quote, under no circumstances should Republicans cut entitlements. Governor Christie, first to you, you have proposed raising the retirement age for younger Americans. What would that age be specifically, and would you consider making any other reforms to Social Security?
Sure, and we have to deal with this problem. Now, look, if we raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s, I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. And the fact is, we need to be realistic about this. There are only three things that go into determining whether Social Security can be solvent or not: retirement age, eligibility for the program in general, and taxes. That's it. We are already overtaxed in this country, and we should not raise those taxes. But on eligibility also, I don't know if out there tonight, and if you're watching Warren, I don't know if Warren Buffett is collecting Social Security, but if he is, shame on you. You shouldn't be taking the money. There are a lot of programs in this country that we all pay for that we don't get a direct benefit from. Food stamps is one of them. I've never, fortunately in my life, ever had me or my family on food stamps, but I'm glad it's there so that no one in this country goes to bed hungry at night if they have availability to that program. But I don't get a direct benefit. The fact is, on Social Security, remember why it was established. It was established as a safety net program to make sure that no one would grow old in this
peak centrist position, peak centrist Republican position. I'm sorry, I'm not even shitting on it. I'm just saying that is like the establishment position.
Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in on this, because you said in June that you would be open to raising the retirement age. Have you determined what that age would be specifically, and what other reforms are you looking at?
So first of all, any candidate that tells you that they're not going to take on entitlements is not being serious. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Right now, you have Ron and Trump joining Biden and Pelosi saying they're not going to change or do any sort of entitlement reform. What we need to do is keep our promises. Those that have been promised should keep it. But for like my kids in their 20s, you go and you say we're going to change the rules. You change.
Yes, we'll have an after show discussion like last time, of course.
Should limit benefits on the wealthy. Bernie Marcus can tell you he hates getting that check. Limit the benefits on the wealthy, and then expand Medicare Advantage plans. Seniors love that, and let's make sure we do that so that they can have more competition. That's how we'll deal with entitlement reform, and that's how we'll start to pay down this debt.
And can you give me a specific age? Have you determined the age?
Again, you have to work with Chris. What I can tell you is it's going to be those in their 20s just coming into the system, and it should reflect more of life expectancy. It doesn't do that now.
All right, Mr. Ramaswamy, have you determined if you would touch entitlements and Social Security? What, if any, reforms are you looking at?
So this is really important right now. We're working within the last window I believe we will have to actually fix this problem while still leaving Social Security and Medicare benefits for current seniors intact. I'll tell you how. The other candidates assume, like Nikki, that it can't be done. And on her math, she's right about it. But her math assumes $7 trillion of our $33 trillion national debt going to fight wars like in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Minus that, our national debt would be $26 trillion right now. Then you go to zero-based budgeting, which I've proposed as a CEO. It's how I've run businesses. It's how many CEOs run businesses. Don't use last year's budget as the baseline. Start with zero as the baseline, and then ask what's actually necessary. 75% headcount reduction. Yes, that is severe. In the number of federal employees in the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. Shut down redundant agencies that should not exist. Deliver economic growth as a positive tailwind. I think we can get to 3, 4, maybe even 5% GDP growth if we really take the regulatory shackles off of our economy. And against that backdrop, I believe this is our last best window to be able to take care of our national debt problem through those severe measures, including sacrificing the foreign wars that many bloodthirsty members of both parties have a hunger for. That's the one secret for how we're going to be able to do this, and that requires discipline. So we can't have the first conversation we were having sending foreign aid willy-nilly to countries whose national debt per capita is less than ours.
Thank you,
But if
Mr.
we do this
Ramaswamy.
correctly, I think this is our last window, and it'll take a CEO from the next
Thank
generation
you.
to do it.
Thank you very much. Senator Scott, weigh in here. What are you looking at to keep Social Security sustainable?
The bottom line is a simple one. We have to grow our economy and cut our spending. Let me just say to my mama and to every other mama or grandfather receiving Social Security, as President of the United States, I will protect your Social Security. The fact is that we're spending today about $1.1 trillion on Social Security, about $750 billion on Medicare, about $300 billion on
surprised that Nikki
Medicaid,
Haley
about
is the one
$400 billion
who's
on veterans
anti-Social
benefits,
Security the most
$1.7 trillion on annual appropriations. If we're going to actually tame this tiger, the way
Is the
you
most
do it
anti
is
what?
not by picking on program that deserve their money coming back out to them. The way you deal with it is, number one, you have to grow your economy. My plan, Made in America, creates 10 million new jobs, grows our economy at 5%. By doing so, you add trillions of dollars of economic activity and billions of dollars to your treasury. Number two, you have to cut taxes. When we cut taxes in 2017, I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Everybody said, well, guess what? Revenue will go down. Well, in 2018, after we wrote it in 2017, what happened? Revenue went up by 3%, and the next year it went up by another 3%. So what we know is that the Laffer curve still works, but the lower the tax, the higher the revenue. And finally, if we're going to deal with it, we have to take our annual appropriations back to pre-2020, pre-COVID levels of spending, which would save us about $500 billion in the next budget window. By doing
Senator,
that, we deal with
thank
Social
you.
Security and our mandatory spending.
Thank you, Senator. Very quickly, would you raise the retirement age? Would you be open to raising the retirement age, or do you rule that out?
All you have to do is go to a farm in Iowa and watch the hard work and the dedication.
Yes or
You and
no,
I
though,
having
Senator?
a conversation.
Yes or
the
no,
answer
though?
is no, but listen to this though, before you go on. Thank you.
I don't
The
think
fact
he
of
has
the matter is that
IQ
the
to have
more
a truly
physical your labor, a year or two
contemplative
or three
conversation
more
like
is
that.
actually challenging to the physical body. You and I might have a different perspective, but for those farmers, they're working night and day.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Governor DeSantis, finally to you. Would you be open to raising the retirement age, and how would you keep Social Security sustainable?
Well, look, as governor of Florida, I know a few people on Social Security, and I know it's important. My grandmother lived till 91, and Social Security was her sole source of income. And that's true for a lot of seniors throughout this country. So what I'd say to seniors in America, promise made, promise kept. I understand what you're going through with the rising prices, and you need that Social Security check. So we'll make sure to get that done. What can you do to help shore up Social Security? One of the things that's causing problems is the inflation. We have to reduce inflation. When you have higher inflation, the seniors get a cost of living adjustment, which means the program's spending more, but it doesn't cover the increase in the actual inflation rate. We also do need to get to at least 3% growth. You're never going to be able to have issues, be able to solve the budget without that. But I would note this. Congress for decades took money from Social Security. Social Security would have more tax revenue than it put out. They would take it and then they'd write an IOU to Social Security. Congress has a lot of dirty hands on this. I'm going to force Congress to stop spending so much money. And you know, one thing we have to do, we talk about the retirement age, is just something that's changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Life expectancy in the United States is declining.
So, Governor,
in this
yes
country.
or no? Would you raise it? Would you raise the retirement age?
When life expectancy is declining, I don't see how you could raise it the other direction. So it's one thing to peg it on life expectancy, but we have had a significant decline in life expectancy in this country,
you
and
rule
that's
it
just
out.
the fact.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Thank you, candidates. And we will be right back after a quick break from Miami, Florida.
Okay, a quick response to Sime Bot in the chat. He can't believe that this is the Conservative Party. Well, this is, because frankly, like, what are conservatives in liberal democracies? Oh, they're meant to conserve the status quo. What is the status quo? It is literally fake and gay liberal democracy. That is what they're here to conserve and here to fortify. Like, these are not like right
even as
wingers by
someone
any
who's
stretch of the
pro-liberal
imagination.
democracy, technically, in a modified sense at least, like, you're absolutely correct in that assessment. Like, they're really not conserving much. And this is as
They're
somebody
just-
like, and by that definition, like I don't really consider myself a conservative. Like I don't like that label. I reject that label. I
No,
mean, I
because
consider myself
conserve means you
traditionalist,
conserve
but, like,
society. It means you conserve tradition, but it's like there's nothing to conserve at this point. So conserve what? Gay marriage?
Just to conserve my constitution and my,
I mean, I'm for that. Like, I mean, the thing is, like I said,
my
I'm for, like, I
freedoms.
guess, like in our DR circles. I mean, I've been very unpopular for my position on gay marriage, but I mean, I still stand by my position. Like, I mean, I don't. It's as a matter of policy, it doesn't bother me. But that is a completely different conversation. That
it is, but I would point people, like, if you want to truly understand like what it means to be like a true like right winger, like you're sitting on the right side of the French Assembly in the French Revolution, where the term comes from, the right.
Means you're a Catholic monarchist like Kilhoun.
Well, you should watch Apostolic Majesty's video on being ultra royalist, more royalist than the king. Like that was kind of like the mantra of like post-revolutionary France, was the ultra royalists essentially keeping the restored Bourbons in check from compromising too much on the revolution. Like they were true right wingers. Like they were true, like I guess what you could say, like conservatives in like the real sense of the word, not what it's used for in fake and gay liberal democracies. But I digress. It's a feeding point because there never will be a right-wing movement in the United States. Like all American politics is varying shades of leftism. That's it. Is the revolution going forward eternally?
Well, the ratchet only goes one way, as we know. So by design.
Yep. And simply, you can
also. Do you notice these TikTok ads? This is kind of
yeah. We literally get TikTok ads.
This is actually kind of concerning.
I mean,
wait,
Timothy
Chalamet is hosting SNL, guys. I do like Dune though. I like Dune was a good.
I mean, it is fundamentally a tale that does not go well with the current narrative, because it essentially it expresses that autocratic monarchy is effectively like the only, let's just say, functional form of government, because it's the most true to the nature of man.
Jihad is based.
Oh yeah, well, holy wars, period.
I mean, did I tell you I got ChatGPT to admit that the First Crusade was actually a defensive war?
I mean, for an AI, that if it doesn't have a filter on that particular thing, like it would have to admit it. Like AIs would just
move into their states from the southwestern border. But I want to talk about opioids specifically and fentanyl. And I'll start with you, Senator Scott. Tens of thousands of Americans' families have suffered a death to fentanyl. Young people sometimes die taking one pill. What can you do as commander-in-chief on the first day to stop fentanyl and the waterfall of it into this country?
Well, number one, we should close our southern border for $10 billion. We could close our southern border for an additional $5 billion. We could use the currently available military technology to surveil our southern border to stop fentanyl from crossing our border. I've already led on legislation that would sanction the Mexican cartels. If you remember the path, the precursors come from China, then they are manufactured in Mexican labs, and then the Mexican cartels bring them across our border. By sanctioning their accounts and eliminating their cash, we starve them of what they need. Number one, closing our southern border makes it nearly impossible to get in. The military-grade technology is a backup, making sure that we not only stop 70,000 deaths in the last 12 months because of fentanyl, it also allows us to deal with the human trafficking travesty that is entering in our country in the same path. If we are going to deal effectively with 100,000 overdose deaths in our country and the 70,000 that is directly linked to fentanyl, we have to deal with our ports of entry and deal with our southern border. If we do that effectively, we have started reducing the challenge from the outside, and then we have to deal with the challenge on the inside, which seems to be connected to a mental health crisis that is spreading throughout our nation.
Governor Christie, Senator Scott just mentioned ports of entry. 90% of the fentanyl that is seized in the United States is seized at ports of entry. We don't know what's coming in across the open southern border. You've been a United States attorney. You've taken on cartels. Can it really be done quickly? What would you do as president?
It can be done quickly in two ways, Hugh, on fentanyl. The first way is exactly as suggested, what our law enforcement has in terms of technology. I would invest in that as president. We need to make sure that law enforcement has every tool at its disposal to do it. Secondly, on day one, I would sign an executive order that would send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol, both at ports of entry and at the open ports of our border. Customs and Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. There's 200,000 encounters a month over the last 11 months. We simply do not have the man and woman power at the border to be able to deal with it. And so dealing with both law enforcement, and you're right, we have done this, we can do this, but we got to give them the tools to do it, and technology is one of the biggest tools that we don't have enough of at the ports of entry. Now, we also need to lower demand, Hugh, in this country. And the way to lower demand is to start treating people again. You know, we started to do this before COVID, and we haven't done enough of it. And for every family out there tonight who has lost a loved one to fentanyl or to any other type of opioid overdose, what you know is all you want is a chance for them to win their lives back. When I'm president of the United States, we're going to call this what it is. It is a disease like heart disease, diabetes, or any other disease like cancer that can be treated, should be treated. We not only have to stop supply, but we have to lower demand and save lives.
Governor. Governor DeSantis, you have talked about using United States Special Forces to attack the cartels where they manufacture the chemicals that come from China. How often? How many? What does that look like?
Well, first, I was speaking to a dad who lost a son to fentanyl overdose. Son wasn't a drug addict. He had taken some pill that happened to be laced with fentanyl, and it was a fatal overdose. And when he told me, obviously the pain of losing a child is as bad as it gets, but he said what was salt in the wounds is that these elites in DC don't give a damn about what's going on in this country. They don't care that we have tens of thousands of opioid deaths, that the fentanyl's pouring in. They are not taking the type of action we need to. We're declaring it a national emergency on day one. I'm sending U.S. military to the border. I'm going to stop the invasion cold. I am going to deport people who came illegally. And I'm even going to build the border wall and have Mexico pay for it like Donald Trump promised. How are you going to do it? Yeah, Mexico's not going to fork over money. We're going to impose fees on the remittances that foreign workers send to foreign countries. We'll raise billions of dollars. I'll build a wall. But we are going to designate the cartels to be foreign terrorist organizations or something similar to that. And we're going to authorize the use of deadly force. We're going to have maritime operations to interdict precursor chemicals going into Mexico. But I'll tell you this, if someone in the drug cartels is sneaking fentanyl across the border when I'm president, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to shoot them stone cold dead.
Ambassador Haley. Ambassador Haley, if the United States uses special forces in Mexico without prior notice to the Mexican allies to our south, what would your colleagues at the United Nations think about that?
I don't care what my colleagues at the United Nations think. What I'll tell you is, first of all, you have to go to the source. We have lost more Americans in the Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. We lost 75,000 Americans last year. Go to the source. It is the reason why we'll continue to say we will end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how quick that flow stops. The second thing is we'll send special operations in to take out the cartels. We need to go to where they're distributing it, where the supply centers centers are and take them out. We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will defund sanctuary cities. We will go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that everybody stays in Mexico and they never get here in the first place. And instead of catch and deport, we'll go to catch and release. I'm sorry, instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is the way we'll deal with the border. Those are the things that we have to do going forward. But I do agree with Chris. One of the first things that we have to do is really focus on mental health and addiction centers. It is something that is needed in our country terribly because we don't deal with mental health, and someone who doesn't get care for mental health falls into addiction, and we owe it to them to treat it like the cancer that it is.
Mr. Ramaswamy, special forces in Mexico shoot them stone cold dead at the border.
One thing I just want to say, and how we're talking about this issue is, like Ron, I've actually met many parents across this country who have lost their kids to laced pharmaceuticals that have fentanyl in them. The only thing I would ask, Ron, I think you'd be on the same page with me on this. Let's not even call that an overdose. Right. That is not an overdose. That is poisoning. If you put that fentanyl in a Big Mac, we would not call that an overdose. You'd call it what it is. It's closer to bioterrorism. And I say that because as it uniquely relates to this crisis, that does warrant more aggressive means to deal with it. So there's a new presidential election in Mexico in 2024. People may not be aware of that. It's going to be someone other than Obrador, who has been a disaster in Mexico. I think he's even mentioned me obliquely in speeches to say that somebody who would do this shouldn't get anywhere near the White House. Well, AMLO, get out of the way. There's going to be someone else in charge. I hope to build a good relationship with that next president of Mexico. We'll use our own military to seal our own southern border. What we need to do is stop using our military to protect somebody else's border halfway around the world when we're short right here at home. Get serious about protecting this border. And then the other thing that hasn't been discussed is the northern border. I'm the only candidate on the stage, as far as I'm aware, who has actually visited the northern border. There was enough fentanyl that was captured just on the northern border last year to kill 3 million Americans. So we got to just skate to where the puck is going, not just where the puck is. Don't just build the wall, build both walls. Can't just complete the wall, use the military to seal the Swiss cheese for the tunnels that they're actually building underneath that wall.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what needs to be
Ramaswamy.
practical and actually get this job done.
Thank you. Kristen.
Thank you, Hugh. Let's talk now about last night's election results. Abortion rights supporters saw victories in Ohio and Virginia following earlier wins in states like Kansas and Kentucky. Governor DeSantis, first to you, how do you see the path forward for Republicans on this issue?
Well, I stand for a culture of life, and I understand that it's important that everyone gets a shot. I'm reminded of a story about a young mother who was struggling in Jamaica about 45 years ago. She was counseled to not have a baby because she was poor, baby wouldn't have opportunity, and she came close to have an abortion, but she decided to have the baby born poor in Jamaica. And the reason I know that story is because that baby girl ended up emigrating to the state of Florida, becoming a lawyer and a judge, and I appointed her to the Florida Supreme Court in August of 2022. We're better off when everybody counts. We're better off when we can promote a culture of life. At the same time, I understand that some of these states are doing it a little bit different. Texas is not going to do it the same as New Hampshire. Iowa's not necessarily going to do it the same as Virginia. So you got to work from the bottom up. You got to do a better job on these referenda. I think of all the stuff that's happened to the pro-life cause, they have been caught flat-footed on these referenda, and they have been losing the referenda. A lot of the people who are voting for the referenda are Republicans who would vote for a Republican candidate. So you got to understand how to do that. But let's just be clear. The Democrats have taken a position. They will not identify the point at which there should be any protection all the way up until birth. That is wrong, and we cannot stand for that.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in. Former President Trump has consistently blamed the abortion issue and how Republican candidates have talked about it for their electoral losses. How do you see the path forward?
I've said it before. I think you have to be honest with the American people. This is a personal issue for every woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband, Michael, was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look Post
You know,
Roe, a
there's a
wrong
very
was
simple
made right. They
position
took it
to
out of the
speak
hands of
against it because
unelected
it's
justices
murder.
and they put it in the hands of the people.
It's just
And
murder
now
of
we're seeing
children.
states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes
I
to
can
the
respect
federal
your
law, which is
federalism
what's being
stance,
debated
at
here,
least.
be honest. It's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it. So no, we haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So
There's
let's
things
find
that go
consensus.
against democratic
Let's agree
values
on
that
what
you could do.
how we can
but-
ban late-term abortions. Let's make sure we encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. Let's make sure we make contraception accessible. Let's make sure that none of these state laws put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty for getting an abortion. Let's focus on how to save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can and stop
Thank
the
you,
judgment. We don't need to divide America over this issue anymore.
Thank you, Ambassador. Senator Scott.
Or you could stop women from voting. Very
Yes.
simple.
Senator Scott, I'd like you to
Women
weigh
should
Or
vote.
in.
we just
How
stopped
do you
letting
see the path
plebeians
forward?
vote,
What do you
period.
make of what Ambassador Haley just said? Do you
Yeah,
see
or
this
get rid
as
of
a
voting
consensus
entirely.
issue?
Well,
Yes,
I'm 100% pro-life. I have had 100% pro-life voting record. I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit. I would not
Yes,
allow
he's
states
so
like
pro-life. He
California,
has several,
Illinois, or New
weekend
York to
children
have
with,
abortion up
20
until
different
the day
ladies.
of birth. I certainly would not allow for governors, former governor, Democratic governor of Virginia, who talked about infanticide. We need a 15-week federal limit. 3 out of 4 Americans agree with a 15-week limit. 47 out of 50 countries in Europe agree with a 15-week limit. I would challenge both Nikki and Ron
this isn't
to
a
join me at a
democratic issue. This is an
15-week
issue
limit.
between
It is
good and evil. Are
in
you
our
murdering
nation's best
children
interest.
or
And
not?
frankly, I think it's unethical and immoral to allow for abortions up until the day of birth. We have an opportunity in this nation to stop that reckless behavior from states like California, New York, and Illinois. I'd go a step further. In my parents' plan, we start by talking about funding, block granting resources to crisis pregnancy centers. We should support adoption. There are a number of ways that we can say to the expectant mother that we stand with you. We should not only be pro-life before the child is born, we should be pro-life after the child is born just as much.
Senator Scott, thank you. Ambassador Haley, your name was invoked. Would you support a 15-week federal limit?
I would support anything that would pass because that's what would save more babies and support more moms. But you have to be honest with the American people. And I appreciate that Tim keeps calling me out for this. But Tim, there was a bill last year. Lindsey Graham sponsored it. You didn't even co-sponsor the bill. And then when you first were interviewed on this, when you ran, you wouldn't even say you were for 15 weeks. What I'm saying to the American people is, let's see what we can agree on. Let's bring people together and decide what we can agree on. I will sign anything where we can get 60 Senate votes, but don't make the American people think that you're going to push something on them when we don't even have the votes in the Senate. It's important that we're honest about that.
Let me go to Mr. Ramaswamy. Would you support a 15-week federal ban? And what is the path forward on this?
You know, you could just make an extra political
honest. And I just want to give credit to Tim Scott. He's
take care of
honest
this
about
issue
where
for
he
you as
stood.
well.
And I
You
think
don't
you should
wanna
be
go through
honest, not
legal
making a
channels.
political calculus, but to say, if a bill is served up, would you sign it? Here's my view on this. Speaking as a man, they say men have trouble speaking on this issue. I don't think we need to be that way. It was my home state of Ohio, I'm upset about this, yesterday, that passed a constitutional amendment that now effectively codifies a right to abortion all the way up to the time of birth without parental consent. Why? It's back to that Republican culture of losing. The Republicans did not have an alternative amendment or vision on the table. I know Ohio. I was born, raised, and I lived there. It's representative of the country. If in the state of Ohio, we talked about access to contraception, adoption, and also here's the missing ingredient in this movement: sexual responsibility for men. We live in an era of reliable
sexual
genetic
responsibility for
paternity
both.
tests that are 100% reliable. So we can say men deserve more responsibility. So we can tell women we're all in this together. It's not men's rights versus women's rights. It's about human rights. And I come back to that case that Clarence Thomas spoke of. A pregnant woman walking down the street, she's assaulted. The unborn child dies in that assault. You find me one person in this country who says that that criminal does not deserve liability for that death. You won't find one. That says we share the same instincts on this issue, but we require, I believe, a different generation of
Ramaswamy,
leadership
thank you.
to actually lead us forward and unite the country on this with
Thank you.
honesty.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Governor Christie, as you know, federal limits are important to a lot of Republicans. Where do you stand on this issue, and what is the path forward for Republicans?
For 50 years, conservative lawyers have been arguing that the federal government should have absolutely nothing to do with this issue constitutionally because it's nowhere in the Constitution. And then Dobbs comes and we finally gain that victory, which was the creation of a constitutional right out of thin air that didn't exist. And now we have people running to say, let's short circuit the states from doing what they need to do, and let's go right to some type of federal ban at a certain number of weeks. And people on the stage have been all over the place, 20 weeks, 15 weeks, 12, 6. Look, the fronters were really smart. And this is an issue that should be decided in each state. And I trust the people of this country, state by state, to make the call for themselves. Now, it's going to lead to a lot of divergence. In Oklahoma, you can't get an abortion unless the life of the mother is at risk. In my home state of New Jersey, it goes up to 9 months that you get an abortion. I find that morally reprehensible. But that is what the people of our state have voted for. And we should not short circuit that process until every state's people have the right to weigh in.
Up to 9 months is
But here's the
insane.
bigger issue, Kirsten.
Like,
the bigger issue is, and
That's
Tim
just
began
evil.
to touch on this, we're not pro-life for the whole life. To be pro-life for the whole life means that the life of a 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup is precious, and we should get treatment for her to restore her life. The 52-year-old who's drug addicted should make sure that any of his children who he's passed that addiction on to are treated well too.
Thank you.
Pro-life's not just in the womb, Kirsten, it's for the whole life.
All right, Governor, thank you. Candidates, thank you. We're going to take a final break, and when we come back, we'll hear from all of you with your closing statements. This is the NBC News Republican president.
Thoughts on this latest part, gentlemen?
I just affirm Catholic social teaching over and over again. I don't care about what appeals to the masses or what appeals to Democratic majorities. Because frankly, if the masses reveal that they're evil and say we want to murder children, well, that's the will of the masses, and they're evil.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The masses' opinion doesn't matter at all.
I'm a hardcore anti-populist, and I find it funny. American elitist. You used to be, you used to be American populist like a year ago. What made you change your position from American populist to American elitist? How'd you get elitist pilled?
COVID, 2020 election, quite honestly.
Uh-huh. Was that you earlier who were saying you'd rather have Biden than Haley? Was that you?
No, I didn't say that.
No,
They're
that was
both
somebody on
terrible.
the on the Discord conversation beforehand, I think.
I think that was nobody in this chat.
No,
But
yeah.
quite honestly, if I was in charge, it would be banned in every single state without exception.
Yes, and let's just say I was suggesting that they use an extra political group to shut them down, even if they couldn't do it legally, because child murder is still murder, and essentially an extra political group. We all should know the type that I'm referring to. If you need a reminder, the essay were like those.
But also the bigger issue
how
is
was your
just,
hiatus?
like-
Didn't you have a stream or something you went on?
Yeah, I did, and then I decided to bounce back here because I think the debate is what is it fizzling out or ending soon?
Final statements are coming up, and then we're gonna have the quote unquote after show where we just discuss what's going on.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get into, because again, like I was doing the police, debate thing, and it was interesting, but it's like, on a night like tonight, like I don't know why anyone would want to not discuss the third Republican debate. It's like, it just seems like, it's kind of like, okay, do the police debate the next day or the day before, not the day of.
Yeah, no, I guess that planning is bad. I mean, this is pretty much yeah, I know. Like, this is the biggest thing tonight, and I know it's just a normie debate, but like at the same time, like why would you have something like that when you can report on this, especially sort of like in conservative circles, or marginally right-wing circles.
Yeah,
By the way, Politicrat, I'm very sad the moderators tonight have refused to address the biggest issue in the race, Chris Christie. Can we get an L in the chat for
literally the
not
biggest
addressing
issue?
the biggest issue on the stage?
Yes, I want a physiognomy check on all these retards. By the way, a more important debate,
What is it for Ramaswamy?
On the Distributors channel right
get this,
now.
no, for Ramaswamy, Pajit Brahman Smarmy.
Okay, whatever. But Dave the Distributors is also streaming tonight, and they're not focused on on this petty bourgeois BS. They're focused on actual important cultural issues.
I think he was talking about food in the thumbnail, so.
Well, they're talking about the meta. That's just his thumbnail.
Primary voters. I'll ask you each to please use your closing statement to focus on any topic you didn't have time to address and why you and not former President Trump would be the party's best choice to tackle these important issues. You each have a minute. Senator Scott, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
There's a crisis that is growing in our nation, and that crisis is cultural and spiritual. We need a renewal, a great awakening. We should reject the left's valueless, faithless, fatherless society. We should turn back to faith, patriotism, and individual responsibility. We should stop choosing victimhood and start choosing victory. We should stop kneeling in protest and start kneeling in
get
prayer.
out of here with your
There are basic truths that built this country. If you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan,
Also, you wouldn't be a neocon.
if you commit a violent crime,
Christianity
you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play
Yes,
sports
flip me
against
off
men.
all you want.
I do
I am
not
right.
just want to.
Audience, please.
I do not just want to win the battle against Joe Biden. I want us together to win the war. The war for our Christian conservative
Senator Scott.
values that changed my life.
Senator Scott, thank you.
And built
Governor
this
If
Christie,
you're an
you have
That's why I'm
evangelical
asking
Christian,
you
not
for your
Christian,
vote.
you're just a cultist to Israel.
Neoconservatism and neoconservatism need to unite. Just saying.
Thank you for hosting tonight. Listen, it's a gift.
Neoconservatism,
A gift to be an American.
Conservatism,
And I'm running for
united
president of the United
us.
States because I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the division. I'm tired of seeing the anger. And I can see in the eyes of Americans their exhaustion. Their exhaustion from the petty personal politics that have taken over this country over the last number of years. I'm running for president to be a president of consequence, to do the big things, to make sure that America's role in the world stays number one, that we stand up for our friends and allies around the world, and we stand up for what we believe in right here at home. And it's not to eliminate our differences. Our differences has always been our strength as a country, not our weakness. But you can't truly say you love America unless you're ready to open up your heart to every American. I'm going to open up my heart to every American as president, and I will make
Not
sure
the
that
ones
I
who hate
return
America.
honesty, integrity to the Oval Office. We deserve and should accept nothing less.
Governor, thank you very much. Let's go to Mr. Ramaswamy now.
When it comes to your
For
closing,
1
you
minute.
definitely want to get it on time. Don't get it over.
We've talked a lot about foreign wars tonight, but we're in the middle of a war right here at home. It's a war not between black and white or Democrat and Republican. It's between those of us who believe in our founding ideals and love this country and a fringe minority who hates the United States of America. And I think it's going to take a commander in chief to lead us to victory in that war, who first of all knows that we're in a war. Second of all, can't be captured by the special interests along the way. But The third is from the next generation, somebody with fresh legs to lead us to victory. I'll shut down the deep state. I'll declare economic independence from China. I'll keep us out of World War III, and then revive national pride in this country. I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just
Mr.
tell us the
Swami,
truth so we can have an honest
time is
debate.
up. Ambassador,
That's an interesting closing.
Ambassador Haley, you have 1 minute for your closing.
Thank you. The world is on fire. We have a war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got China on the march. It is very important that we know how to defend our freedoms and how to defeat terrorism and socialism. We have to know the difference between good and evil. We have to know the difference between right and wrong. We need to know that a strong America doesn't start wars, a strong America prevents wars. And the way we can focus on that is to make sure we go back to the soul of America and be strong and proud again. And we can't do that. We can't win the fights of the 21st century with politicians from the 20th century. We have to move forward, and we can do this. I know we can do this. So join our movement. Go to NikkiHaley.com, and we will once again show what America that's strong and proud looks like. God bless.
Ambassador,
Nikki,
thank you.
John Bolton hasn't even endorsed you. Okay, he's like waiting to see whether you or Ron DeSantis are going to
Shut up about John Bolton. That's 7.
We must reverse our
Nobody
country's
cares about
decline,
that
and
old
that is
fucking
going to
war, except for
require
you.
leadership.
I can.
I will take the hits.
Yeah,
I will take
like
the
I said,
arrows.
just
I will
you.
take the barbs because it's not about me. It's about you. It's not about the past. It's about your future. We are going to fight for you. I am going to win for you and your family, and I'm going to lead this country's revival. As a veteran of the Iraq War and in the Navy, I will always put service above self as president. As the father of 3 young kids, I'm going to ensure that this country is left to the next generation in better shape than we found it. And as the governor of Florida, I delivered on all my promises, and you can trust me to deliver for you as the president of the United States. I am asking for your vote. I'll be a nominee that will be able to win the election. I will be a leader you can be proud of, and as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you.
Governor DeSantis, thank you.
That was a perfect closing right there. Yeah. Ron's not perfect, but he's pretty good.
That is
That was a
going to
good closing.
conclude our debate. The next line says, if the audience can hold their applause. That didn't work out. But anyway, for just a few more seconds, I'll ask you to just hold the applause. On behalf of my fellow moderators, I want to thank the candidates for their time and for this spirited debate. Really good, deep conversation, and we appreciate you all being here. Thank you as well to our wonderful hosts here at the Adrienne Arsh Performing Arts Center. On behalf of the Republican National Committee and all of us at NBC News, good night, everyone, from Miami.
All right, everybody. Final thoughts. Let's discuss. Let's take the next 20 minutes or so just to do our obligatory post show. Just discuss what we think. Commentators, feel free to put, or not commentator, but audience, feel free to put what you want in the comments. If you have any questions for us or if you have your thoughts, absolutely feel free to share. But I just want to go around the panel, starting with Kilhoun, then Net 7, and then American Elitist. Just what your general takeaways are, and then we could kind of go into the discussion from there. Of course, starting with Kilhoun.
I mean, okay, where do I start besides that? I mean, I do not support any of these people because, for one, none of them actually represent me and my actual beliefs and actually what is truly for the true, the good, and the beautiful of what I think America should become, not what these people want to preserve it as this rotted corpse of a degenerated nation. They're just willing to peter it on into eternity, and they're symptoms of their own generation. I don't blame them for having the views that they do because they were literally spoon-fed as children these beliefs that they are now trying to incorporate into their platforms that while they run for offices. And I think it's going to be clear cut, straightforward. It's going to make them win an election. I mean, elections don't really matter. As Stalin said, it's the person who counts the votes that actually matters. Like, democracy has always been a sham that should be treated as such. So yeah, doesn't really matter. Just a bunch of old boomers and one millennial arguing over, frankly,
I
nothing.
think they're Gen X, actually.
I mean,
Christie
they are
might-
spiritual
Christie might be a
boomers.
But then again, Gen
They're
X, aren't they just
spiritually
Boomer Junior?
boomers. Yeah, they're like the more cynical boomers, pretty much.
Where the boomers
Just
are
more-
actually, they were at least the true believers.
Yep. But I
Um,
forfeit to the next.
Net 7, my buddy. What did you think? What did you think of this? And I know you represent, and I mean this, and I don't mean this in like an insulting way, but you're the more quote unquote establishment, I guess, Republican type on this stream. And so, like, from that perspective, what was your takeaway from the debate?
Well, a lot of, I'm sorry, I'm going through a breakup right now, so I've been drinking.
No, absolutely. No, it's fine. It's fine.
But like I guess what I can say about this is that a lot of candidates had a good thing to say, but I'm thinking about who's gonna fucking win in the fucking primary against Trump, and then who's gonna win in the general. Okay, I don't think Tim Scott's got a chance in hell of winning the primary, let alone the general. But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, the Democratic Party has the African American vote locked down, so he's not really going to attract many African American voters. Chris Christie has a great.
I just want to say, because remember, if you vote for Biden, you ain't black.
Truest thing he's ever said. Truest thing he's ever said.
That's the thing. That's the first thing I've laughed to in a few days. Like I've had a really bad fucking 2 weeks. So, I get your point there. But like also like with Chris Christie, he's got a great chance of winning independents. But the problem is that can he win the general? And I wanted to wait to see whether I was going to endorse Christie or Ron DeSantis while watching the third debate, and I don't know. I have to see what the results are polling wise, but I don't know if Christie's been able to stamp his place. Nikki Haley is trying to play both worlds. She's trying to appeal to, centrist voters or liberal voters even, and then appeal to conservatives. And the problem is that she's going to be forced to take a position, and I don't know where she stands, because it's kind of like you guys criticized me for this earlier, but a lot of neoconservatives they won't call themselves neoconservatives, but they are essentially neoconservative aligned, at least, like John Bolton, have not even come out and endorsed her.
I mean, Bolton's not technically a neoconservative, but in practice, he basically is.
That's what I'm saying. In practice, he is, but he's not a self-described one.
Yeah,
and the fact
he's
of the
an
matter is
offensive realist, essentially. Yeah,
and the fact that they have not even come forward to endorse Nikki Haley tells me that they were waiting for the results of the third debate, polling wise, because they're still hedging their bets on who's going to win the general against Trump, and then who can win the primary against Trump, and then who can win the general against Biden. And Ron DeSantis came out, and he definitely tried to stake his claim, based off what I heard. Did he make the impact though he needed though? Because right now he needed to stake his claim as I'm kind of like Trump, but I can actually win. And Vivek, I don't even pay attention to, because Vivek is literally just running for Trump's VP spot. So I think we can all ignore him. But those are my thoughts.
Okay, American elitist.
Yeah, so my thoughts are essentially, I'm really disappointed in our favorite Subway representative. I really thought he would have a moment like he kind of did in the first debate. The ChatGPT line, very disappointing. Pretty standard fare from him. Tim Scott is so forgettable. I mean, you forget they even exist. But then you're reminded he comes from South Carolina, so okay, it makes a lot of sense. It comes from evangelical Zionist Christian heartland, so let's go ahead and for below as representatives. Not relevant. Nikki Haley performed a lot worse than I thought she would. Sure, we didn't have that moment like she did in the previous debate where she popped off for a couple minutes. Loser, not going to go anywhere. Ron DeSantis actually surprised me. He
Same.
acted semi-humid this debate. So I guess he finally got a better speech writer, better therapist that told him how to act human. So he performed a lot better than I thought he would. And I hate the Bajit, but he did have some good points, but still not going anywhere, running to be in Trump's cabinet at best. But ultimately, all these people don't support my people or my interest, and they're more loyal to that state in the Middle East than my nation. So ultimately, irrelevant. But it is nice to watch the clowns bicker between themselves for favor of the donor class. That's my thoughts on the debate.
Okay. Well, yeah, for me, I think, well, let's go on and discuss who we think actually won the debate. Because for me, I think, and yeah, I don't think Haley performed nearly as well as she did in the past. At least I didn't see the second debate, mind you. Again, I was going through some things then.
She did a lot better in the second debate, I will say.
Well, I think she did well in the first debate also, but so she didn't do anywhere near as well as she did in the first debate. But I think she, and surprisingly enough, DeSantis, I think they're the ones who came closest to winning. A Brahmin Smarmy was just being Brahmin Smarmy, as always. ChatGPT. Chris Christie is just, again, Chris Christie. There's no other way to describe him. And then nobody cares about Tim Scott. Like, I just wish Trump were there. It would have been so much more entertaining.
Like I call Vivek Hamaswamy, Hamas Swami. But yeah, I think that was the with Ron DeSantis, he's tried to be careful on, like criticizing Trump enough, but not going so far as where he alienates potential Trump voters who might say, you know what, I like Trump, but I think Ron has a better chance of winning. And so I think he made a good jab in the beginning where he said he should be on this debate stage making his case, but he's not. And I think that was a good sort of middle ground where he's saying to Trump voters, your guy should be here. But at the same time, he's also going to his base because there's a lot of hardcore DeSantis guys saying that, why isn't Trump here? Why is he not here making his case when he could be here?
Again, I'm more of like a Ron Paul guy, I guess, politically. So, like, I mean, really, none of these guys really appeal to me that much. But, I mean, I don't know. If I had to vote for one of them, honestly, I hate to say it, but Nikki Haley, I'd probably vote for Nikki Haley over, like, DeSantis. I used to like DeSantis. I just don't anymore. Again, Brahmin Smarmy, that's done. Like he doesn't even matter. Like I just don't like him. Just his personality. That it's not even his politics. Just personality completely. Yeah. Trump. I mean, I'd vote for Trump before I vote for DeSantis at this point.
What are you talking about? Trump's a freaking clown. Like
He is a clown. No, he is. I'm not saying I'm not a Trump supporter.
See, this is why I hate you fucking libertarians, because you libertarians infiltrated the GOP in the early 2000s.
We were not successful.
Attaching yourself. No. You did it quietly because like the GOP is not like the Democrats. The Democrats demand conformity. They demand everybody practically vote the same. The GOP is far too open-minded for my book. Okay, we were like in the 2000s where we said, oh no, we're welcoming of all these different opinions, the libertarians, the paleoconservatives, neoconservatives, theoconservatives, when the fact of the matter is we should have told the libertarians, get the hell out of the party. And the fact of the matter is that the problems we're seeing today in the GOP result from allowing Ron Paul, or should I call him Ron Paul, into the party and allowing him to go so mainstream to the point where his policies infect the party.
Ron Paul mainstream. Imagine thinking that the libertarians actually ended up having influence in the Republican Party.
They do. Like the
No, they
Republican
didn't.
Party. Yes,
Oh
they
my
do.
God,
The
no,
Republican,
they
not in name officially, but certainly in policy, because in the
No.
2000s, the Republican Party was very hardline interventionist, very hardline pro the Iraq War, very hardline the pro
If
Afghan
anything, it
war.
was more the paleocons than it was the libertarians.
No. The paleoconservatives have always been a part of the Republican Party since the 90s, and they had
Yes,
a
but they've always been the most
anti-interventionist
anti-interventionist group in the Republican Party. Anti-interventionism was their bread and butter. That is
yes,
the
but they
core
were
of
never
paleo-
taken seriously though. They were kind of looked like, oh, that's just the crazy cousin in the party. It was the libertarians
I
who
love you guys just fighting
realized
over historiography
they could
right
not
now.
win in the LP, who came to the GOP, who made those policies more mainstream. They
I
gave.
wish you were right. Like honestly, like what you are describing is my fantasy, but it just never came true.
No, it's a reality. It doesn't have to have.
I wish it were the reality. Look, I wish it were the reality, but you're just
it's
wrong.
an effect though of it. You know,
Like kind of two Jews bickering about how Jewish they are.
No, we're bickering about who. We're bickering over who is going to split the bill at Christmas Chinese dinner.
Now let's argue about how much money we're going to give you.
I will buy the Chinese Christmas dinner for everybody because I'm a nice guy, you know. But I mean, I'm just saying right now that look, allowing the libertarians to come over to the Conservative Party was the biggest mistake Republicans made in the 2000s. They were way too open-minded for our own fucking good.
You people are honestly all the same. Like libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, like all of you are liberal. All of you fall into the school of classical liberalism of varying degrees. All of you are virtually identical to me, and I see no difference. You are a uniparty. You are a two-party state.
I don't fucking use the term classical liberal. Classical liberal was a term used by Republicans who wanted to appeal to
I don't care
voters.
what definitions you use. You
And
fall
it's not
within that
true-
school, whether you admit it or not.
I don't use the term classical
You fall
liberal
into
because
the
I'm not a
Enlightenment
freaking
frame
classical
game.
liberal. Look, I'm a hypocrite in many ways when it comes
I'm
to
the
when I
classical
call
liberal
myself
guy.
a conservative. But I believe
Yeah, I
in
know
the
you
basic tenets of conservatism because I believe that conservatism actually is better for society. Classical liberalism is a made-up term that was used by conservatives in 2020 to 2022 to try and appeal to Democrat voters to make them vote Republican. And guess how that worked out? No red wave
I mean,
came
classical
because
liberalism
liberalism
is a
is
thing,
the
though.
father of social. Classical
Like,
liberalism isn't a
like
thing.
that, that's
It's
not like
a
like
made-up.
okay.
Liberalism is a sin.
It's
Look,
not a
liberalism is
made-up
the father of socialism and the grandfather of communism. You can't get to communism and
And guess
socialism
what?
without
Liberalism
liberalism.
is the father
When you
of the
get
American
liberalism-
Revolution.
Yes,
as
you
well.
eventually
but
get
modern
socialism
American
because-
conservatism is a branch of capital L liberalism. Like that is categorically true.
No, it is not.
It's
Look,
a
no,
denial
no.
of
You
reality
haven't
on
studied
that Seven's part.
actual conservatism. Look up, like,
True
seriously, like, have you
conservatism
not
is the
listened
long-day
to like
rebellion
actual
against
the
the
history
French
of actual
Revolution.
conservatism?
Those types of men, not what you call conservative in the United States, which are just liberals who are slightly less that they're slower on the revolution than the Democrats are.
Let's go back. Let's go back to focus on the debate specifically. This is a conversation for a different time. I'd be more than willing to have all of you guys on for it. But back to the debate. Hey, American Elitist, I haven't heard from you. Who do you think won the? Actually, no. Let's go around. I don't think I asked Calhoun. Who do you think won the debate this evening?
Who won? I don't know. Vivek had the best puns and the best, I guess, snarky retorts to his other more senile members on the stage. But, and he's at least not like a war hawk constantly pushing for, we must send white boys to fight and die for Israel, as all the other ones are. And I would be one of those white boys being sent over by one of these politicians to fight and die for Israel if that was the case.
You're in the
And
military,
also
yeah.
why I do not care for neoconservative policies in the Middle East.
That's 7. Who do you think won the debates?
Neoconservatism is based, and the reason that people here in America
Get
sleep well at
over
night is because
your
we went to
obsession with this fringe ideology.
Afghanistan and crushed the Taliban, the Al Qaeda, and because we went into Iraq and stopped the world's biggest state-sponsored terrorism. But back to the debate as to who won. I'm going to say, look, Nikki Haley needed to break out, and she had to stake her place at number 2, and I don't think she succeeded. And Chris Christie had to break Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, and that's a hard task because Nikki Haley only had to break Ron. Chris Christie had to break both of them, and he also had to get out of a tie position with Vivek. I don't know if he succeeded there because I remember what those people were talking about before the debate, where there are a lot of Republican donors who have a lot of cash on hand to throw to big super PACs, who have literally waited to this third debate to make a decision. And I think that Ron DeSantis, he said some points, but I wonder if he really came out guns blazing. I'm not sure he did, because the first debate, it was obvious he needed to wait. The second debate, it was obvious that he needed to throw out a little bit of attacks but hold out. But the third debate is where he needed to go all out. I don't know if he went all out because I missed part of it, but I remember, at least with what I saw, he was starting to get there, but I don't know if he hit there. Vivek obviously is running for VP spot for Trump, so I ignore him completely.
I have this weird feeling that it's going to be a 4-way presidential race. Trump is ultimately not going to get the nomination. He's going to run as an independent, but it is basically going to be Nikki Haley DeSantis ticket, Donald Trump Vivek Ramaswamy ticket, of course Joe Biden Kamala Harris ticket, and then probably RFK Tulsi Gabbard ticket, something like that.
That would so be I would say this is that if that were to happen, Joe Biden would win if RFK and Tulsi Gabbard don't run. So that to me is a dangerous proposition, because imagine if Trump runs as a third party and there's no counter in the Democrats. This is like 1992 on repeat, with
but it would be 4 people. And the thing is, they all take votes away from each other, and that would be glorious.
Well, you just like that idea because you love chaos.
I do like.
You just want to see what you just want to sit back, eat the popcorn, and say, okay, let's see what happens.
Smoke a cigar, drink some scotch,
I'm more concerned about, we could actually elect a president who lost a war and doesn't fucking care. That
Joe
concerns
Biden
the shit out of me. And I could then I could walk.
Like
And,
elections
because
even
here's the
matter.
thing, I think that is absolutely insane. And no superpower can remain a superpower when you have at the head of the office a person who lost a war and doesn't care. And it's not just my perspective. You can read the political books that have been written recently, and you can get inside access to the White House and to how Biden is feeling. And Biden, based off what everyone is saying who's been around him or has seen him, doesn't care. And when you have a president that doesn't care, you have a state on decline.
So, American elitist, who do you think won the debate?
As much as I don't want to say it, I think Vivek barely won the debate, with Ron coming in second, if only because he was able to act slightly more human.
As human as he can, yeah.
Or
But
funny.
can we all agree that that Scott lost the debate?
debate.
I mean,
What's
he
wrong
he
coming
should
in
just
second?
go. He should just be picking some plants somewhere in the deep south that if I
Oh,
said
boy.
any more, it'd be
Oh,
considered.
You'd be an
That's
edgy,
pro-
edgy Kilhoun.
Yes, edgy Kilhoun tonight because frankly, like that's literally his room temperature IQ can comprehend. So
I don't know why
think
Tim Scott. I don't know why he's still running. Like
I
I
was about to
think
call
he,
him Rick
he made
Scott.
some really great points. He made some really great points. But the problem is that if Chris Christie had it hard, where he had to literally break both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis at this end while he was tying with Vivek, Tim Scott had to break past all of them. And did he?
He's a donor brat. He's not meant to win. He's a donor brat.
Like I can see Tim Scott endorsing somebody, but I think the problem is that the part he should have dropped out earlier and endorsed either Christie, Haley, or DeSantis, because at this point it's a three-way race between the alternative to Trump, which is Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, or Chris Christie. While Vivek is essentially running for Trump's VP, so we can all just ignore him. But I will say this to AE. Vivek did make some great jabs that helped him in this debate, but so surprisingly, he actually did better. Did he win? I guess we'll debate that later.
He did better than the first debate, at least. He was
Well, in
awful the
comparison
first
to the rest of the clowns, I mean, like, who were pretty abysmal this debate.
But this is literally just like a bunch of sudras debating over how much dirt that they can fling at their political enemies, essentially, and they get all their opinions formed from them by Brahmins above them that you don't really see. So, like this is why I say it doesn't really matter. These should all be men who aren't in positions of political influence because they're not spiritually oriented towards actual leadership.
Also, there
Pajit
shouldn't be
Brahman
women on the
Smarmy.
stage.
Hey guys, what do you guys think of this nickname? Pajit Brahman Smarmy.
I
Well,
don't
he's not a
understand
Brahmin, he's a
because, like,
merchant.
I don't understand your point because, like, Chris Christie's Christian, Nikki Haley, as far as I know, is Christian. Ron DeSantis is Christian. Tim Scott's Christian. So I don't really get your point.
Is Ramaswamy
Hindu?
No, he's a Hindu. He's a Hindu.
It's funny because in the first debate he kept saying God, 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 and it's
No,
like,
he's a Hindu.
I mean, he's
Well,
totally.
he's saying God to appeal to the evangelifish voters.
Yeah.
And I mean, it ultimately won't matter. Although it'd be funny if we ended up like the UK with a head of government that is from the merchant caste of the subcontinent.
No, I kind of do love that that the UK Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is Indian. Like, there's just something so cosmically ironic about that.
Well, that's different from America because India was part of the British Empire.
That's seven. That's seven. We can't hear you.
Well, it's different.
No, we can hear him. Just you.
Well, India was part of the British Empire, so hence we got the name, the jewel in the crown, just like Indonesia was the jewel in the crown for the Dutch. So that's expected, but it's different from America because we don't have that same.
It's not expected because the Anglo should be ruling their own nation, not a foreigner. But that's a whole other issue.
But think of the days where there was considered, the Union of Britain or something. I forget the name of it, where everyone considered just uniting all the colonies into one big British Union, like Canada.
all the English colonies, not India was not going to be given
colonies,
representation. Yeah, it was like Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Not India was going to be a subservient member to the superior members of any union.
Well, I don't know if that would have happened in a union of some kind. I forget the name of it, but
that literally was like the idea of the Imperial Federation was essentially the core states of like Canada,
So,
Australia,
bigger
New
question,
Zealand.
getting back to the debate, guys. Who do you think is going to drop out first? For the
Tim Scott
Tim
definitely
Scott
should have dropped
or
Yeah, the black guy.
Tim, look, it's because here's the
I'm
thing.
having some severe audio problems right now on my laptop. I think my speakers might have blown out for some reason. So I'm going to end it right here.
I can hear you.
I apologize, but
We can all hear you. I think you should just get a better speaker or get a headset.
yeah, I'm going to end it here. Sorry to be so abrupt, but I need to figure out what the hell's going on. So thank you, everybody, for coming on. I can't hear many of you. I'll invite you guys on next game. Again, I apologize, but have a good evening.